Hello, everyone. I'm finally live. Sorry, my computer was being a piece of shit and I had to reset. So, sorry for the delay. And Stone Soviet yesterday did a stream and I didn't want to step on his toes, as you say, as he did his stream with Jason Falcone and the other guys. If you are interested, I'll give you a link to that stream after this is over. Sorry, I have not been active that much this month. I just haven't been feeling up to it, honestly. I've been going through some stuff in my personal life. I won't discuss it here. Some drama, and it drained me all of my motivation to do stuff here. And with the unexpected thing that happened a few days ago regarding Ukraine, I felt obligated that I had to at least learn everything I can about the situation. And even still, I don't know everything. And I'm pretty sure there's people who are watching that are far more qualified to talk about what's going on in Ukraine than I am. Usually in these kind of streams, the Let's Talks anyway, I haven't done one of those in a while. I just talk about generally whatever I feel like talking about. Originally, I was going to talk about the 3DS and on the Wii U and 3DS. Sorry, the eShop on the Wii U and eShop Wii U on and 3DS shutting down. But I feel like what's going on in Ukraine is far more important than talking about some thing that affects, gamers. I mean, it's a first world problem at the end of the day. And I feel like talking about that when there is a serious, possibility we could get into a world war over what's going on in Ukraine. Like it's fucking going crazy right now. And I feel like it would be irresponsible of me because I hold communists to a higher standard. And if I don't practice what I preach, I'm a hypocrite. So my priority this time is to talk about what's seriously going on, in current events. If anyone wants to join in on this stream regarding the current events that are going on, Russia, the caravan in Canada that's spreading worldwide. Anyone wants to give their 2 cents on it, you're welcome, because this is, anti-imperialist action. We got to discuss it. Like, I don't think, discussing things that are not relevant to what's going on is, respectful to, because I don't, let's be honest here, everything that's going on right now in Ukraine, it will, potentially give us into a hot war, and we just cannot, afford to ignore this. Now, I'm not going to give my stance yet on the Ukraine situation because it's too early, and I would like to get people on here if I can to give their own perspectives. But I will say this, a lot of people have been exposing their true colors and said some pretty idiotic shit. Like, you have Be Liberal, who deleted the freaking community post saying USSR 2. It's like, you fucking moron. Putin, have you not paid attention to what Putin said? Putin fucking is a hardcore anti-communist. He said, he blamed Lenin for Ukraine. He fucking is anti-Stalin. It's like, you fucking idiot. If you are anti-Stalin and anti-Lenin, you're anti-Soviet, as far as I'm concerned. So fuck off, be liberal, and stick to whatever stupid nonsense that you fucking like to talk about. You fucking dumbass. And yeah, I don't care if I fucking, do a jab at Be Liberal. I fucking hate the fucking guy. He's a disgrace. Fucking using fucking Ewoks are not fucking cheerleaders or fascists. Ewoks are fucking bash fascists, not fucking support them. I mean, seriously. Okay, I had to bring that up because someone's going to bring up be liberal, and it's only appropriate that I bring it up because someone's going to. It's amusing in a way, but the whole problem with this situation with Ukraine is people are so easy to like jump on the bandwagon one way or the other without actually looking at the facts. The situation with Ukraine is complicated. And I'm not saying this as, oh my God, I don't know what side to take. And it's complicated. No, it's fucking complicated. It's fucking complicated, this whole situation that's going on in Ukraine. It's been a problem that's been around for almost a century. And I don't know. So I can't say with authority, what caused the situation in Ukraine. I'm not an expert either on what happened during the Soviet Union with Ukraine. I mean, this country has a long history, and I can't at all, actually tell you with authority. There are people that are more qualified that could talk about this than me. But the situation of Ukraine, it is scary. War is not a fucking joke. And I've seen supposedly anti-war leftists, and I said supposedly, because let's be honest here, if you're a fucking cheerleader of fucking Russia, you're not a fucking, anti-war, anti-imperialist. I mean, give me a fucking break. Seriously, give me a fucking break. I know I'm sounding pissed off, but it's hard not to be pissed off when I see people I once respected fucking cheerlead a fucking war in Ukraine. Here's a link for those who want to talk about what's going on. I mean, it fucking sickens me. Yes, fucking the Nazis in Ukraine are fucking worse than fucking Russia. But that doesn't change the fact that Russia has its own Nazis too. So fucking this entire situation of Ukraine is fascist versus fascist. It's like Putin is not fucking an angel at all. He isn't. And watch as the likes of Caleb Maupin and Haas slander anti-war protesters. People who oppose war of Ukraine. Watch as he does that. And no, I don't fucking support the Ukrainian government. I oppose fucking, fucking Ukraine. The Nazis in Ukraine. I oppose the fucking Nazis and fucking no matter where they are. Like, I don't care. Fuck Nazis. That doesn't mean I should support fucking Russia. I mean, fuck lesser evilism. Lesser evilism is why fucking fascism is allowed to rise. And honestly, I don't fucking give a shit. I don't care if it's unpopular. I really fucking don't. If being anti-war is being unpopular, you know what? Go fuck yourself. I'm anti-war regardless who the fuck is doing the fucking imperialism in the first place. I don't fucking care if it's Russia. I don't care if it's China. I don't care if it's America. I don't care if it's Britain. I don't care if it's NATO. Imperialism is still imperialism. Yes, American imperialism is fucking Nazism. That if you support like NATO or the imperialism of America of American empire, you're a fucking Nazi as far as I'm concerned. If you support fucking the imperialists in the West. But Russia? No. If you support the imperialists in Russia, you're just an anti-American imperialist. That's all you are. And that's the mistake that fucking I made at one point. I was so anti-American that I refused to see the imperialism of other countries. Now, I know America is worse. That's undeniable. if you know the history of America, it's colonialism, it propping up fascist countries worldwide, it helping prop up fascist dictators worldwide, installing people like Saddam Hussein, who was a fascist, installing Pinochet, who was a fascist. I can't keep track of every fascist regime America has propped up because we would be here all day. I could list for hours. There's books upon books upon books about books of American imperialism. Anyone that says I support American imperialism because I don't support what Russia's doing in Ukraine, go to fucking hell. I am as anti-imperialist as you could fucking get. I'm anti-imperialist when it comes to America, and I'm certainly anti-imperialist when it comes to China and fucking Russia. I don't care who's fucking doing it. Because guess what? Who are the winners in this conflict with Russia and Ukraine? Who are the winners and who are the losers? Who are the fucking losers? Who are the people that ultimately lose? It's the proletariat of both of these countries. That's who fucking lose. That's my stance on fucking Ukraine. I don't support Ukrainian Nazis, nor do I support fucking Putin. Fuck both of them.
Hello, sir.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah, I just want to also give my 2 cents on the whole Ukraine-Russia situation. I think there's a lot of confusion going on within the left. And I've also been raging recently about Caleb Maupin, so I think it's good for me to come on and contribute a bit.
I fucking hate Caleb Maupin with a passion, and learning about what the stuff he said about Lenin, blaming Lenin for the fall of the Soviet Union. It's like, what the fuck kind of backwards bullshit is that?
Oh, it gets even worse than that. He
Give me a
apparently.
clip. I want to see the clip so we can react to it.
Okay. It's,
This is related to Ukraine, and I think it's important that we fucking show it people who don't even know Caleb Maupin. I don't want to do it, but I have to do it for the cause.
It's only like 10-minute clip, so.
Fucking Christ. 10 minutes of Caleb Maupin's, borderline genocidal fucking rhetoric against fucking Ukrainians. Great. Just fucking
All right.
great.
I posted the clip.
That sounds like fun. And I'm being sarcastic. Fucking Christ.
But if anybody wants to see a principled anti-imperialist take on this, go to Jason Unruh's channel, and he has his first video about this. Pretty much sums up exactly what we're saying.
Hakeem was attacked by Caleb Maupin recently because of his take on fucking Ukraine. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And I think, as I said before, Caleb Maupin is starting to become, well, not even become, but he basically is a different version of Vosh.
He's worse than Vosh, because Vosh at least doesn't pretend to be a communist.
Yep, that is true.
I don't care what anyone says. Vosh is a fascist, but he doesn't hide that he fucking is an anti-communist. Caleb Maupin is masked off anti-communist. Oh God! And we're watching this at the normal speed, so unfortunately, fucking we're gonna expose ourselves to fucking the Burger King man. God. Let's just watch this and get this over with. All right. Prepare to lose the brain cells, people.
And the worst part is the introduction that we skipped. He literally compares himself to MLK, Henry Wallace, and Huey Newton. It is awful.
We're gonna watch everything in this clip.
Yep.
All right, people. Let's show that Caleb Maupin is a narcissist. All right, let's begin.
Yep.
Have spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we live can be and must be the century of the common man. A radical redistribution of economic power. If you know the racism is just a byproduct. Yeah. Everything will be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people. We need a government that will make sure.
Oh my God.
What a fucking narcissist. Seriously? What the fuck?
Yes,
What the
yes,
fuck
Caleb.
am I watching?
Yes, Caleb, you are the same as Huey Newton, MLK, and a former Vice President of the United States.
Martin Luther King would have been against everything that you are. Same thing with fucking Fred Hampton. What the fuck?
It's...
Okay, let's continue. Who are you talking about?
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty. We got to start getting out there with the people. Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
Get out of the movement.
Out of the movement to the masses? What are you? Who are you talking about? What masses?
Caleb, the only people you appeal to are the petty bourgeoisie and labor aristocrats. You don't give a shit about the masses.
And even if let's be charitable for a second, they don't fucking want this communism or whatever he's pushing. Oh,
they
God.
want a red-painted social democracy, which is social fascism, as we know.
You can't even get Bernie Sanders elected. What chance do you have to fucking build social democracy if you can't even get Bernie Sanders?
Yeah. Anybody who thinks that you can have any kind of success in electing any politician in America in 2022, your brain has ceased to function at this point. But Caleb apparently thinks that all we have to do is elect a politician, they get elected, and then somehow we get socialism.
I don't think Caleb Maupin, he's smarter than he makes himself out to be. I don't think he actually, he doesn't even want fucking socialism. He just wants a, social democracy, because real socialism would require America not to exist.
Yep. And we'll see later on in the clip, he reveals himself that he opposes indigenous First Nations peoples, new African peoples' self-determination. Because you'll see the clip where he basically says it.
All right.
We need a government of action.
Also, you notice the CPI logo. It looks literally like the Nazi flag.
Putin gave a very good speech. Very well thought out, intricate, speech that he gave. On before recognizing Donetsk and Luhansk. It was a long speech, and it was compared to anything that any U.S. leader has given. This was a very complex speech about the history of Ukraine, how it was formed.
What the fuck?
Okay.
He looks like a fucking. He looks like a. What the fuck am I seeing? Who the hell does he think he is? I'm sorry. I know this is petty of me. He looks like a fucking nuts. He looks like a Hitler Youth.
He really does. He really does. And I even commented that the CPI, it really does look like a Nazi flag if you look at it correctly. I even commented all it needs is some black and it's good to go, basically.
This literally looks like a fucking right-wing podcast right now. This background.
Yep. And also like him kissing Putin's ass and everything else, it's like I don't think Putin would probably be any smarter than any US president. I mean, they're all um, bourgeois puppets of capital. That's what they're there for. I mean, I didn't really watch the speech or anything like that, but Putin said some really stupid and anti-communist shit based off what I've seen. And and I've said it before and I said it again today. Caleb Maupin is the Baghdad Bob of America. He is just a propagandist. He will say whatever he is told to say to keep his job.
He looks like a fucking fad. He really does. Even though he isn't. He looks like a fad. Anyway, let's continue.
And what's been happening, and it was hard hitting. This guy did his homework. He brought facts, and he laid it all on the table. I don't know if any U.S. president was ever given a speech anywhere near as intricate, as well thought out, containing so many facts as what Putin did. Go and watch Putin's speech for yourself. Right? It was a great speech. And for a while, they were showing it on CNN, and then they were like, oh shit, kill it. People in America might hear this and realize not only that he actually has a lot of very good points, but also that our leaders are fucking retarded and Putin's a genius.
Oh, that's a nice ableism there.
Whoa. Our leaders are retarded? Holy shit. Nice ableism, Caleb. Well, I don't know if they're not retarded.
No. They're fucking retarded.
they're fucking psycho. They're greedy psychopaths.
Yeah.
That's what our leaders are. That's more accurate to say.
I mean, you have to be a psychopath to get to that kind of power. I mean, Putin is a psychopath. Biden is a psychopath. I mean, sociopath. I call them sociopaths, not psychopaths. All these people that get to power off the suffering of others is going to be a sociopath.
I also think it's insulting to people who actually have problems functioning in society. I just think this is insulting to compare someone who has difficulty learning, difficulty functioning, and comparing them to our psychopathic leaders in this country. I think it's insulting. And most of these people that he fucking calls retards are fucking the poor. It's the poor that are retarded mostly.
Yeah.
Or labeled as retarded. It's mostly the poor. I mean, this is fucking wow. So much for you being pro-America, Caleb. If you're gonna say that all of our leaders are retarded, so does that mean the population that voted for him are retarded too?
He's pro-Malthusian, as I said. I mean, as Lumpin said, he wants to do what he accuses everybody else of doing. He wants to work us all to death. That's what China does to its poor. They work them to death in factories. They have sweatshops where they have suicide nets, and that is the model that Caleb is following. He wants to destroy the environment so capitalist profits can continue. He doesn't want socialism.
Let's continue.
And this is he's a very, very smart man. I have been in the same room as Putin 3 or 4 times. He's a very intelligent person. He is not a fool. He's a brilliant man.
Mitch McConnell and Trump are not stupid either, and neither are a lot of our politicians. They wouldn't be where they are if they were stupid.
Yeah. This is gaslighting what Caleb is doing right now. This is it's like, does he realize some of the people who caused the 2008 financial crash were some of the smartest people in America, quote unquote, who went to the best schools, it's like he's again, it's this intellectualism that Roosevelt created. He is a an aristocrat, and he's using what Roosevelt did, the idea that there's this so-called intellectual, and I'm using air quotes, uh, part of the working class that are above and highly skilled compared to the rest of the working class, and that is what he's doing right here. Um,
I mean, Joe Biden, when he was at his prime, was he an idiot? I mean, the stuff that he managed to do, and I hate Joe Biden, mind you, people. I fucking hate him. He wasn't stupid when he was at his prime. A lot of our leaders, that managed to do the evil shit that they did, they wouldn't be able to do it if they weren't smart.
yeah, again, it's like it is childish what Caleb is saying. He has a very simple.
Wouldn't even be able to do what these people managed to do. He honestly, he wouldn't. It doesn't matter how much books you read. Like, there's different kinds of smarts that are required to be a good politician. And Caleb Maupin would make a terrible politician.
Yeah.
Because his idea of what's being intelligent doesn't mean anything in politics. Trump is stupid as shit on everything else. But when it comes to psychological warfare or the ability to, manipulate people or get his followers to fucking follow him, Trump would, is one of the most charismatic fucking presidents, in my lifetime.
Yep.
There hasn't been as many people that fucking worship fucking a president since Reagan and Obama.
And that is terrifying to say.
And I cannot believe I'm fucking praising these fucking evil ghouls of human beings, but I'm about facts, not feelings.
Yep.
Because we're communists, not fucking a bunch of emotional fucking SJWs.
Caleb himself has actually praised Bonapartism and Kaiserism. These things, or Caesarism, the idea that, the great man theory, that all we need is the great man. The CPI USA even has a day celebrating the birth of Julius Caesar or Caesar. This is what Caleb wants. This is the product, as we know, Bonapartism and Kaiserism is the proto-fascist model, literally speaking. That is what the term Kaiser and Caesar, Tsar in Russia and Germany was. He was Caesar, and Caleb is literally taking his mask off here. He wants a Bonapartist figure. He wants fascism. He wants somebody like a Huey Long or FDR, who were fascists, to come in and save his aristocratic ass, basically.
Let's continue.
Yep.
Actually, after you're done.
Because Caleb is an aristocrat, and guess what? When the revolution happens, he loses privilege, and that's what all this is about.
Oh yeah, fuck, I forgot to play. All right, let's continue.
Brilliant strategist, very, very well informed about geopolitics, economics. This guy knows his shit, and he knows what he's doing. And he rescued Russia from the disaster of the 1990s with economic planning. He developed a model for rescuing Russia's economy with Gazprom and Russia.
A communist would have done that.
And also, I got to point this out. Putin was part of the St. Petersburg Communist Party in the 1980s. And do you know what he did at the time? He implemented capitalist rotarism to bring back capitalism to the USSR. He was literally part of the Gorbachev-Yeltsin coup to install capitalism in the USSR. He, implemented things like perestroika and the glasnost. So you're basically praising Putin for solving a problem that he created. Excuse me? This
Yeah,
is
let's
like saying, yeah,
let's ignore like the millions of Russians that died in the 1990s.
yeah,
Let's
yeah. It's
ignore
like
that.
praising the serial killer for
It's
not
like,
killing again.
seriously, what happened in Russia in the 1990s was a genocide.
Yep,
Oh, but of course, that's not a problem because most of those people were poor. So, yeah, fuck it.
exactly.
And this guy is a very, very effective strategic negotiator, strategic planner. He's really into geopolitics. He knows his stuff. And Putin, before he recognized, he knew the United States was going to come down on him. He had to explain how he was going to do it. And so he gave a speech. And I have seen so many people misrepresenting this speech. Okay? Is Putin a communist? Of course not. Of course he's not a communist. Not a communist. You think Putin's a communist? We're deeply misinformed. But, Putin is not a communist. And it wasn't a...
And neither are you, so stop pretending.
Yep.
Per se, but the speech said a lot of things that a communist could agree with. One thing that it pointed out was that the fall of the Soviet Union was a disaster for the entire region, right?
Putin doesn't even like the Soviet Union. He's been on record basically saying the Soviet Union was a mistake. What the hell are you talking about? You can find this all over the internet.
Yeah, Vladimir Putin wants to bring back the Russian Empire, not the Soviet Union. Like, look at what he said about Tsar and his family. The guy that killed tens of millions of Russians through famine, through the pogroms of the Jews and other minorities, and led his country to disaster in World War One. And this is apparently some well thought out leader that we're supposed to praise, apparently.
No mention of the millions that died, during the decade after the Soviet Union fell. No mentions of that, or
Oh, yeah.
the drugs or prostitution. No mention of that. Let's continue.
All my life, I've been told that, communism failed, communism didn't work, and in 1991, Russia got freedom. It's been so amazing when Russia got free, and communism was just nothing but starvation and death and misery. That's not what Putin said in his speech. Putin talked about how the Soviet Union built Ukraine. The Soviet Union industrialized Ukraine. The Soviet Union created the modern Ukraine. And in fact, it was Lenin who drew the borders for what is now Ukraine. And then Khrushchev.
Okay. We gotta pause this
fuck?
one right here.
What the fuck?
We gotta pause this. Lenin did not, quote, draw the borders of Ukraine. Lenin simply gave the existing borders of the Ukrainian people there their own self-determination through a Soviet Socialist Republic within the USSR. This is like saying I'm trying to think of an example here. This is like saying I'm trying to think of a good example. He's basically gaslighting here, and because I know the history, Ukraine, the Republic of Ukraine was declared in 1917, and the USSR came into existence in 1922. So you don't have to be a mathematician to know that that is approximately 5 years difference. and that the idea that Ukraine just, you know, will give you a Ukraine again. It's like this white man, you know, the natives will just give you some land here and there. Black people, we're gonna just give you a black belt. It's like this is the mentality. This is the settler mentality right here. The idea that these nationalities, he doesn't believe in national sovereignty, is what he's saying right here. Like you could make this justification for Palestine not existing because he's literally doing it right here.
I wouldn't be surprised if he actually says that at some point. Nothing shocks me anymore with Neil Maupin.
Well, Putin is a Zionist, so. And so is Alexander Dugin. So.
Yeah. Anyway, let's just continue.
And parts of it. And there would not be a country known as Ukraine if it wasn't for the Bolsheviks. That the Bolshevik national policy of recognizing different nationalities is responsible for the creation of modern Ukraine. And the Soviet Union industrialized Ukraine. I bet you didn't know that at one point Ukraine had the world's largest hydroelectrical power plant. The biggest power plant in the world was in Ukraine. And you know who built it? Stalin. During the 5-year plans, they built the Dnieper Dam. The biggest hydroelectrical power plant in the world was built in Ukraine. Under the Soviet Union, Ukraine was fully electrified. Under the Soviet Union, Ukraine was fully industrialized. They wiped out illiteracy. They brought running water and electricity to the whole country. The Soviet Union, socialism, created Ukraine. And since Western capitalism has come back into Ukraine, Ukraine has gotten poorer and poorer and poorer, right? And the fall of the Soviet Union devastated Ukraine economically. Putin talked about all of that in his speech. You would never hear that on American television. They never want to acknowledge basic economic data. Ukraine under the Soviet Union, good. Ukraine since the fall of the Soviet Union, bad. That's basic economic data. Life expectancy has gone down. Living conditions have gotten worse. That's a basic fact. If you compare life in Ukraine at the time of the Soviet Union to life in Ukraine ever since then, life has gotten worse. And
the same thing with all the Eastern Bloc. It's like what is your point?
Exactly. And also he talked about Stalin. Does he realize that Stalin was a Georgian? Like, I mean, I know he knows that, but he's making it seem like the USSR was just this Russian thing. And it's like the USSR was created specifically to decolonize the Russian Empire. And one of the problems of the USSR in its later years, when capitalist roaders took over, was because of Russian chauvinism. It's the same thing with Han chauvinism in China, which, by the way, Mao warned extensively about, because under capitalism, there will be cultural genocide of minority groups and tribes. This is just how things go. This is capitalist accumulation. You're going to have different groups having to compete when you don't have a socialist economic model. It's the same thing with the Uyghurs. Things in Xinjiang prior to capitalism, like things were pretty stable. Like the Uyghurs had their own culture, their own language, everything like that. And then after capitalism, they got to learn Han Chinese. Mandarin. They got to abandon their culture. The Chinese government puts them in concentration camps and suppresses them. And this is what Caleb wants. He wants this is exactly the model he wants in America for natives and black people. He wants to force them into this white supremacist society.
Yeah. God, this is worse than I thought it would be. Let's continue.
Poll after poll after poll has shown that Ukrainians, even ones that are virulently anti-Russian, admit that life was better under the Soviet Union. Putin recognized that and said that all the Soviet Union has been bad.
That's fucking just common sense, Caleb. What the hell are you? What's your point?
Yeah.
Bad for the region. If that is not a pro-communist talking point, I don't know what is.
That is not a pro-communist talking point. It's fucking common sense.
And also, he's literally so, like, no, Putin. Here's the okay. Putin didn't want the USSR to collapse. He simply wanted to change the name to the new Russian Empire, or whatever he wanted to call it, and implement capitalist reforms. And he basically wanted something the equivalent of what China has, which is a fascist state, corporatist state, which is the model of what he's trying to build in Russia. China has ceased to be a socialist country in 1978. They didn't have a dismantling of the state. They simply had capitalism put back into the system through capitalist rotors like Dang that Caleb loves. And the problem that Putin had is that they couldn't do the same thing in the USSR. Like, Putin is a capitalist. Do people realize that? Putin is like a billionaire or something like that. So is Xi, by the way. All these people, like all these politicians that get into power, they all become basically billionaires and millionaires and all these other things. It's just like Hitler, basically. Hitler was he was actually lumpen at one point, but when he got into power, he started talking to all these rich people, and he wasn't from the wealthy at all. But when he got into power, and he started selling his books, and he was a tax dodger too, by the way. People don't know that Hitler was engaged in tax dodging. He had copyright on his book Mein Kampf. He lived a millionaire lifestyle along with his photographer. So this is what populism really means. It means basically, I get to live the life of a millionaire. The rest of you just get crumbs, basically.
Yeah. Let's continue.
And everyone's focusing on a point that Putin made, criticizing Vladimir Lenin, which is completely fair, right? And
What?
I think
Wait.
that's the point. Now, obviously, you've gone on the leaders of the Communist Party, they don't agree with this. And that's okay, we can disagree, right? But I think
No, Caleb. No, because if we disagree with you, you'll just slander us and basically put words in our mouth and make it seem like we support positions we don't support. So no, you're full of shit, Caleb.
Yeah. It's like he just like casually says, yeah. By the way, he made a slight criticism of Lenin, and apparently that's okay. It's like, that's not okay. Like, being anti-communist and against some of the core tenets of our ideology is not fucking okay. Like, especially considering it has to deal with national liberation. You fucking asshole.
Mao fucking said combat liberalism. Maybe you should brush up on that, Caleb, because what you're doing is liberalism.
Did you know that he also compared the Irish freedom struggle? He literally just said it was just some religious conflict. And
Is it in this clip?
No, not in this clip, but he said it in, I think, one of his books or whatever. And I was just ripping him apart. And I brought up facts like the 1798 revolution was actually led by Presbyterians, not Catholics. And he also apparently said that the Irish national liberation struggle wasn't socialist. And it's like, motherfucker, who do you think Lenin who do you think Marx and Engels spent their time with when they were in England? With Irish liberation fighters. And they were part of the First International. Oh, God. So much historical revisionism.
You know, he's sounding more and more like a Nazi the more I listen to Caleb talk. But let's progress. I'm not gonna do like 5 hours on this clip.
No, yeah.
Here's the point. When he says that Lenin's obsession with labeling different peoples throughout the Soviet Union as nationalities weakened the Soviet Union. Now,
what the fuck? What? What? That region of the world is one of the most diverse on the planet. Are you going to say Africa is everyone is the same nationality in Africa? Or fucking even Europe? This is Nazi's talking point right here, guys. Fucking basically denying, the nationality of certain peoples around the world.
You could make the same argument for, I don't know, First Nation people in America, New African people in America, Palestinians. Like, using your logic, using the Caleb logic, Palestinians should just shut up and accept that they're Israelis and that they're second-class citizens, and accept their status in an apartheid system, that they're not nationalities. And it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's like, this also denies since we're in America, this actually denies fucking various, people from various cultures in America as well.
Yep. First Nation people, New African people, Asian people, and all so-called, I'm using air quotes here, white people. There's no such thing as black or white. These are social constructs created by the British and Spanish as a distinct socio-economic group.
You could also use this argument against descendants in Japan of Koreans who had their grandparents kidnapped from their fucking home. Oh, they're not Koreans, they're Japanese, even though Japan doesn't see them as anything but Koreans. Or the indigenous nations that exist in Japan, they're Japanese.
This is the product of capitalism. Capitalism exists to suppress cultures that are not part of the broader majoritarian part. It exists to suppress things like tribes. That's why things like the War on Terror exist. Do people know that China, Russia, and the USA are trying to destroy all tribes and label them as, quote, terrorists because they want to have their own cultural hegemony?
What makes this more disgusting is, like, majority of the people, immigrants that came from, Ireland and Italy and China, fucking, they were treated like fucking second-class citizens. Especially Italians. It wasn't even that long ago that Italians weren't even treated as Americans or Germans. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, and even hell, even Germans and America considered itself an Anglo-Saxon nation up until the 1950s, until Roosevelt started implementing his quote-unquote multiculturalism, which basically just means white multiculturalism. Um, Prior to that, it was an Anglo-Saxon nation, and um, even Germans had to assimilate. So, like, let alone my own peoples, as I am of Scottish ancestry myself. Or
Oh, and here's one final thing before we move on to the subject. I guess Hawaiian should accept, that they're American. I
Caleb
guess
himself. Caleb
what?
himself has no. Caleb himself has admitted he does not support breaking up the United States. Like he says, like he'll be two-faced about it. He'll say, "Well, we should have a black belt, but I don't support giving these. I don't support breaking up the United States." So it's like you're a hypocrite, Caleb. You're a fucking hypocrite.
Yeah, let's continue. God.
That is the point that this is the first time he said this. He said this many times that Lenin, right? First of all, under Karl Marx, there was no nationalism.
Oh my God!
He said all
No
More fucking
nationalism.
lies. No more
No,
fucking lies.
no nationalism under Marx. Okay, I guess apparently he's just going to ignore the entire 18th century, 19th century, the 1848 revolution. Does he not realize that Marx and Engels were part of revolutionary struggle in Germany at the time? Does he not know that?
I think
He
he
does.
knows. He's deliberately lying. He's lying to his primary audience. Fucking white supremacists, neo-Nazis, who have some weird sympathies to whatever version of communism they think they're like, believing in. It's like this is all what this is. Or pulling people who are new to communism and away from, real communism into some fucking weird cult like fucking fascism with fucking communist characteristics.
Yep. And like Engels himself, a lot of these petty bourgeois types will cite Engels. Well, they'll say, well, Engels was the son of a capitalist, so therefore I should be allowed to make as much money as possible on things like Patreon and stuff. And it's like, motherfucker, do you know that Engels was second in command of a German revolutionary army? In fact, he got in trouble because he kept tearing down German national flag, the gold, black, and red, and he kept putting up the red flag of communism. And they kept saying, he got kind of in trouble, and they kept saying, "Hey, stop doing that." And it's just like a funny little trope. So, he wasn't just this, pampered, bourgeoisie like the way you guys want to be. It's like, Caleb, you're full of shit. You're full of shit.
People like to. Okay, the thing is, Caleb is fucking dangerous. He should not be allowed in any fucking leftist circles. This guy is poisoning the well far more than Foch ever could.
And his cultists are basically, are dangerous as well. Like they will slander you, they will dox you. They may even threaten to kill you if you come out against them. It is Scientology almost at this point.
It's a fucking cult. It's like I had to block like Dux James on Facebook because I didn't want to risk him knowing who my family members are.
Well, Dust James recently retweeted a white nationalist, so hey, Dust James has kind of revealed himself too.
Dust James is a fucking fascist. Honestly, I'm not shocked considering the way he fucking strawman Jason.
Oh God, that
The
debate.
guy, I wouldn't be shocked if he the only reason for his existence is to basically make people more wary of the lumpen, to divide and conquer.
Yeah, he exists basically to uh, give the CPI USA some veneer of working class, and I'm using air quotes here.
Anyway, let's just watch this print. Let's just, what more will he spit out of his ass?
It's just the workers against the bosses. Workers of the world united. And in the final years of Marx's life, he started to say, maybe I'm wrong about that. Because
Lie. Wait.
The Irish people were being oppressed. And they weren't being oppressed just because they're workers. They were being oppressed on the basis of being Irish and their Irish nationality. In a lot of cases, they were being oppressed because they were Roman Catholics. And so Karl Marx started to argue that Irish nationalism, even though it wasn't communist, was progressive. And Karl Marx's daughter started wearing a crucifix around her neck to support the Irish people. And in England, in London, they used to hang Irish revolutionary fighters. They used to hang Irish people who had fought for their country.
They kind of still do that, actually.
And also, literally, what the hell is he talking about? Like, Karl Marx and Engels didn't just quote, in the final years of their lives, start supporting the Irish question of national liberation. They were supporting it pretty much from day one. They were involved with Irish freedom fighters. I think Engels' girlfriends, some of his girlfriends, was Irish freedom fighters involved in the Fenian movement. And the Fenians, the Irish liberation struggle, were part of the First International. So what the fuck is he talking about here? He's basically trying to rewrite history. He's trying to make it seem like Marx was anti-nationalism. Oh, just up until the end, or something like that.
Oh my god, this is nothing more than bullshit. I mean, anyone who's read basic fucking Marxism would know that Caleb is full of shit here.
Yeah, and also what do you think the SPD was? The SPD originally, before it became revisionist and social fascist, was a Marxist party. It was there to engage in struggle against the German state or the Prussian state. Does Caleb know that socialism and communism was actually illegal in the Prussian state or German state until they had the things like the SPD fight against it and push for certain reforms? Does he not know this history?
I think he does. Well, Caleb is not a stupid man. He's just doing this for his followers, because Caleb knows his followers are stupid and will fucking listen to anything he says.
Yeah, he's lying by omission, I think.
He's not stupid.
Drag them to London and then hang them in public school. And Jenny Marx, Karl Marx's daughter, put a crucifix around her. Protested against these executions of Irish revolutionaries. If you can imagine about how unpopular that might be, they're going to drag some Irish revolutionaries into some big square in London. They're going to hang them, and there's all these people that are excited to watch them hang. You're standing outside there with a sign saying, freedom for Ireland, you're protesting that. That it takes courage, and especially if you're Jenny Marx, the daughter of Karl Marx, you're not born in London. That's some heroic activity. And Karl Marx, in his final years, came to understand that the Irish people fighting for their national liberation as Irish people, even if they weren't communists, even if they weren't socialists, even if they weren't revolutionaries, I mean, they were revolutionaries, but if they were revolutionaries on their national basis, on the basis of their nationalism, that was correct. And I believe Karl Marx also began to support the people of Poland and in their, national liberation aspirations. And so Marx died, but Lenin, studying Marx's writings on the Irish question, studying Marx's teachings about Poland, looking into it, Lenin wrote his very famous thesis on the national question. And Lenin argued that oppressed nations fighting for their national liberation was progressive and should be supported. And he came to that conclusion. And Rosa Luxemburg vehemently disagreed with Karl Marx about that. Rosa Luxemburg said, no, all nationalism is inherently reactionary. All nationalism is inherently reactionary. She disagreed with him. A lot of Marxists disagreed with Lenin on that point. But that became the position of the Bolshevik Party, was that all nations have the right to national liberation. And what Putin argued in his speech is that belief that all nations have the right to national liberation, he took it a bit too far. And that when the Bolsheviks...
What the fuck?
How can you take something a bit too far? What the fuck? No, if anything, they didn't go far enough.
They should have gone further. I mean, what the fuck? I mean, I love it how he mentioned earlier how it took a lot of courage for, Karl Marx's daughter to protest the execution of Irish revolutionaries. Funny that you say that, Caleb. Russia is committing an act of aggression, and you could be fucking denouncing it for what it is, an imperialist action, but we all know you have no principles, that Russia is paying money in your bank account, and money is what it matters to you, not the struggle for working people around the world. No wonder you don't support fucking, the people's wars are going on in the global south. No wonder you fucking, don't fucking believe the indigenous in America should have a right of self-determination. If you think Lenin went fucking too far, or the Soviets went too far, how they went too far? What, by recognizing that there are different cultures in Russia? That's a fucking bad thing? Russia's one of the biggest countries on Earth. You actually think that every, nation within that continent is going to fucking be the same? I mean, Russia is almost its own continent, almost.
Yeah. It is and the USSR was even bigger than Russia. And the USSR wasn't even Russian. It was completely different. This is what I'm talking about. If we had a socialist revolution in America, we would have to do away with America. We would have to do away with the settler colonialist regime, because even if you maintain it, you're still going to get the same results of this white ethno-apartheid state, basically. And my problem is that they didn't do enough in the USSR for national liberation struggles. For example, I will fight to the death for this, but I maintain that Crimean Tatars should be allowed to have their own nation in Crimea. I do not believe Russia should be allowed to annex Crimea, because that is rightful territory of the Tatar people, and they have been oppressed and they have been suppressed for centuries now. And nobody, I mean, except for me and very few other people, are bringing this up. They are the natives of that land. Crimea is not Russian. It is not Ukrainian either. It is Crimean Tatars. And I don't
According to
care.
Caleb's
Yeah,
argument, none of none of the countries that America, its colonies should be freed. They should, by his logic, they should all be
yeah,
part of the American, empire.
yeah. I mean, using his logic, the Philippines, um, like, why not? Shouldn't America be allowed to take over the Philippines and turn it into a U.S. state? What about Puerto
Or
Rico?
yeah, or the countries that has under its thumb in South America.
Yeah,
It's like this is fucking what. I mean, this is what Muddy the Waters looks like, people. Like Vosh, say what you will about Vosh. Yes, he's a fascist. Yeah, Vosh supports literal Nazis. Yeah, Vosh literally, in his debate, like with non-compete, was literally doing Nazi apologetia. Freaking Vosh constantly does, anti-Semitic dog whistles. Yes, we know this, but Caleb Maupin has been doing it for almost 10 years now. He's been doing this shit. He's just more open now because of what's been going on with America and around the world with fascism being mainstreamed.
yep, yep.
This is nothing new.
And as we know, fascism is capitalism in decay.
Well, let's be honest here. Vosh is a distraction. As far as I'm concerned, anyone that still talks about Vosh is not paying attention to the danger, in the room. Caleb Maupin isn't fucking Vosh. Caleb Maupin has connections to people around the world. That he has the ability to build a fascist movement. He has the funds. He has the connections. Vosh is just some fat idiot in fucking California.
You know, the CPI changed its name to the CPI USA.
I'm
That's
not
their.
shocked.
He's now trying to build a fascist movement worldwide, and he said this himself. He doesn't want to just stop with America. He wants the world. This is how these people operate. It's like Hitler. Like, at first we're going to take over Germany, then Europe, and then the entire world, basically. This is their mindset of these people. They want world domination. They want fascism. This is why he sides with people like Alexander Dugin, who advocate Eurasianism, which is fascism and neocolonialism, and who is actually part of the Russian government, might I add, as an advisor.
Let's continue. Jesus.
Power in Russia. They went to all the different peoples throughout the Soviet Union, and they started declaring them to be nations. And in doing that, he planted the seeds of dividing the peoples of the region.
Oh, God.
Right?
No.
For example, Belarus. What is Belarus?
Oh, my God. This is white
Russia,
nationalist talking points.
right?
Is
So,
this a fucking
it's
communist or
Russia,
Richard
it's just
Spencer?
White Russia. Right? It's just the part of the country, so is Belarus a separate nation? I don't know. Alexander Lukashenko certainly thinks it does.
Nations have existed for thousands of years, you fucking idiot. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, and Belarus is, like, again, it's another country that existed. Like, look up Belarusian Democratic Republic. Belarus existed prior to Lenin, quote unquote, giving them a nation. This is ridiculous.
This is nonsense. It's like, what? This is going against basic historical facts. Nations have no one who studied history, even American mythology, would fucking say that the fucking nations, treat them like it's some new entity. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Seriously, the entire country that we live on had fucking thousands of nations, and almost all of them are gone in the span of like a 500 years.
And the minority and the ethnic groups that was imported to the U.S., they all had to assimilate to this white Anglo-Saxon culture. And if they didn't, they would be suppressed. They would. I have talked about this before, and I said it again. In 1917, there was lynching of German Americans. There was burning down of shops. They had to change their names and their culture. And America is not a melting pot. It is assimilationist. It exists to destroy other people's culture. This is what it is. It's the destruction of culture, the destruction of other people's, because this is what the fascists want.
America is worse than the Nazis and the British ever were.
Yep.
Far worse.
Killed
I mean, fucking Christ.
And killed a lot more.
Well, the British Empire is still the most evil empire in history, but America isn't too far behind.
Getting up there.
Anyway, let's continue with this, whatever the hell we're watching.
Listen, I wouldn't feel comfortable as somebody who's not from there and doesn't speak the language and has no idea. I would never feel comfortable going up to a Belarusian and saying, "You're not a nation. You're just it's just a part of Russia. It's white Russia." I wouldn't feel comfortable saying
What the
that.
fuck are you talking about? Russians don't view themselves as white. They view themselves as Russian. What the fuck are you talking about, you Anglo-Saxon dumbass?
Yeah, and you wouldn't say that, but you're implying it here, Caleb.
Fucking Anglos need to shut the fuck up. I know it sounds hypocritical because whatever, but they seriously need to shut the fuck up regarding situation, like when it comes to stuff that's going on in fucking, Russia. I mean, seriously, you don't know a fucking thing about culture, Caleb. Shut the fuck up and listen to classical music and wear your damn suit, okay? You're poisoning the damn well. You're fucking you're misleading people and fucking turning people that could be communists into fucking Nazis. Better than fucking Richard Spencer ever could.
Oh yeah.
God, I can't believe I would say that Caleb is worse than Richard Spencer.
But here we are.
I don't know enough about it. I'm not from there. All right? I don't know. But it is a little bit weird.
If you don't know, then shut the fuck up, Caleb.
Yeah. Then why are you mentioning it?
And the Ukrainian language is very close to the Russian language.
No, you're just implying it now.
So there's other regions, and basically Putin argued that by going around to all of these groups in the Soviet Union, by saying you're a nation and you're going to have your own language and you're going to have your own national identity, and we're going to have a house of nationalities in the Soviet government. We're going to have the Supreme Soviet on the one hand, and then we're going to have the Soviet of nationalities, and we're going to give every nation.
That's bullshit. That never happened.
Yeah.
He wasn't bringing the people together. That's what? Putin.
You know what? Who else said this stuff, Caleb? I don't know. Hitler?
Yeah.
Mussolini?
Hitler was against these people having nations. I hope he does realize that. You are aware of that, Caleb. You are aware that Hitler wanted to turn these people into slaves. He didn't want to give them any nations.
God, this makes me sick. I can't believe I once respected this fascist.
I used to go on his live streams too. I mean, he's good at pulling people in. This is the problem. He's turning good cadres into these right American nationalists.
I'd argue that he's fucking more right wing than your average fucking Republican voter.
Yeah. I'd argue that too.
I don't hear Republican voters talk like this.
Yeah.
He's on the right of them. We are on the right of a Republican voter, even a Trump supporter. Yeah. You're a fucking Nazi. I'm sorry. I know that's words over you, so let's probably use another word. Whatever, let's continue.
And that might be right. I don't know. I'm not from there.
Shut the fuck up,
so
then, you fucking. This is, you know what? Even though I'm gonna say this, this is what I fucking hate about Americans who try to talk about, the affairs of other countries and cultures of other countries. They act like they fucking know, and when they don't know, it's like, I don't care to hear about it. It's like, then why are you talking about it, Caleb?
yeah.
Why?
And also he's doing this whataboutism. He's saying, well, I don't know. Is it this? Is it that? Is it this? Is it that? It's the same thing he did with well, what is an ethnocentric nation? I don't know. Is France an ethnocentric nation? Is America an ethnocentric nation? Is Israel an ethnocentric nation? He's doing this muddying of the waters where he's trying to, make it so he's trying to muddy the waters. So he might as well just come out and just say he doesn't believe Ukraine and Belarus are nations, because then he would be being honest.
Oh God, this is making me physically sick.
I've been over there a few times, and I don't feel comfortable saying that Putin's necessarily wrong about this. He might be right. He might be wrong. He might be right. But that was a very big part of what the Bolsheviks believed, right? They referred to the Tsarist Empire as a prison house of nations.
Which it was, just like America is today.
It literally was a prison house of nations.
It was one of the worst fucking empires, in history at the time.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck?
There was a thing called the Pale of Settlement. And do you know what that was? That was the area where Jews were allowed to live. Jews were settled in places in Eastern Europe. They could not leave those areas. They were forced to live there. And guess what? That entire territory was taken over by the Nazis. And guess what happened? They were all killed.
Jesus.
And they really believed that one of the main points of their revolution was going to these different nationalities and giving them their own. And these people, they wouldn't even have their own. A lot of them wouldn't have their own written language if it wasn't for the Bolsheviks.
Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. I can't believe this. A written language if it weren't for the Bolsheviks.
Yeah, this is complete and utter, bullshit. Basically, what he's saying here.
This is like basically saying they would not have a culture if it weren't for the Soviets. It's basically saying that their culture is not really their own culture. It's actually Russian culture.
Yeah. We'll give you a land. It's not like these nations existed prior, and we're just recognizing it now. We're just fucking getting to it.
Oh my God.
You fucking ginger fuck.
This is mask off. I might as well name this stream Caleb reacting to the Caleb Maupin going mask off.
Yeah.
Going to these various nationalities and uplifting them on a national basis. And let's not forget, the most important book written on the question of nationalities was not written by Lenin, because Lenin was a Russian. And Lenin was a Russian. He had some Jewish heritage, but he was ethnically Russian for the most part. And
wait, why is that? Wait, why is that relevant?
Yeah, that is a good question. Like, and he was more than even Jewish. He was like Swedish, and I think he had some German hair. He was he was even Tartar, if memory serves correctly.
So wait, why does he have to bring up the fact that he has Jewish heritage? Why is that relevant?
Good question. That's a very interesting thing to note there.
It's like, is that the reason you have issues with Lenin, Caleb? Because he has Jewish heritage. Is that your problem with Lenin? Oh God, this is fucking Nazi fucking shit. I've heard Nazis say, "Oh, Lenin was a Jew, Stalin was a Jew." It's like, holy shit. This is way worse than what I was told. Way worse. Holy fucking shit.
Lenin didn't feel comfortable writing the book on nationality. So who wrote it? Stalin. Why? Why did Stalin write the book? The book on the national question, published by the Bolsheviks, was written by Stalin. And why was it written by Stalin? Stalin wasn't Russian. Yeah, I know that's a shocker, right?
Okay.
No shit, Sherlock. No shit.
So basically, he's admitting he doesn't subscribe to what Lenin or Stalin said about the national question. He's basically saying that Stalin should just accept that he's Russian, accept that he's not Georgian, accept that Georgia has no culture or he even says, I think Georgia wasn't a nation prior, and it's like, do you not even know that Georgia was involved in the Crusades back 1,000 years ago? You fucking idiot.
Caleb, what do you expect from someone that's a product of the American education system?
Yep. He probably couldn't even locate Georgia on a map, honestly. I mean, I can locate every African country on a map in under 2 minutes. Okay, so I know what I'm talking about. Every African country I can name in under 2 minutes because I actually know my shit. I would open up maps and I would study as a kid. I wasn't this, pampered aristocrat like Caleb who was just, sat in school with my thumb in my mouth. I actually, had to study outside of the American educational system.
It's like fucking Christ. Okay, how is this gonna get worse? It's gonna get worse. I
think it gets worse.
Stalin wasn't Russian. Stalin was not Russian. Stalin wasn't Russian.
We're not stupid, Caleb. Every communist has read fucking Stalin's work. No, it wasn't Russian. What's your point, moron? What's your fucking point, Burger Man? Seriously, what is your point? How is that relevant? Stalin was correct in his book on his work on the national question. So was Lenin. What is your point? Is it because Stalin isn't Russian that his work on the national question isn't valid? Is it Lenin because he was Russian that his work on the national question wasn't valid? Get to the fucking point, you moron. Okay, we're not fucking idiots.
Stalin was Georgian. Stalin was from Georgia.
Brilliant, Maupin. It's not like we couldn't find that out with a quick Google search.
So stupid.
Not from the state next to Alabama. Georgia in Central Asia. Stalin was from Georgia. The oppressed nation of Georgia. Compared a nation by the Soviet Union. That's in the House of Nationalities. Stalin was from Georgia. He was a Georgian. I heard it in the speech. Watch. He said in the speech, he said, it's so ironic that modern Ukraine was created by the Soviet Union, right? It was Lenin who basically declared, that Ukraine would be a separate republic in the Union of Soviet republics, and that added certain territory to it. And Stalin added other territory to it. And Khrushchev added Crimea to Ukraine. Crimea would never have been considered part of Ukraine, but Khrushchev, for whatever reason, changed the borders of Ukraine and put Crimea in it. And so Putin remarked, he said, it's so funny that these people that are Ukrainian nationalists are constantly talking about decommunization. Because there wouldn't be a Ukraine if it weren't for communism. Lenin, the guy who created modern Ukraine, they're tearing down all the statues to him. They're tearing down all the statues to Lenin. And they're tearing down all the statues to Stalin. They're tearing down all the Soviet memorials. And again, there would not be a modern Ukraine if it weren't for the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union designed it. He said, so, these people really want to decommunize, maybe we will. And he was hinting at the fact that if these people really, really want to completely decommunize, then they'll be absorbed back into Russia. Because, again, it's actually a good remark. It's a pretty sophisticated dig.
No. Okay, so he literally just said, so he literally just conflated anti-communism with anti-Russian. He literally just said that Russia should be allowed to annex Ukraine. He's pretty much just saying that right here, right there. I'm like, what the fuck? So do you think America should be allowed to have annexed Iraq when they invaded? Mr. Muffin Man?
Fucking good God! How does people? This is our anti-imperialist guys. He basically admits that Russia has a right to annex Ukraine, despite Ukraine being its own country.
This is straight up Nazi shit right here. Like,
What the
honestly, I will be the first to say it. Caleb is a neo-Nazi. I mean, he's not even neo. He's just a straight up Nazi at this point. Because neo would imply new. This isn't new.
Fucking Christ.
It's a pretty sophisticated dig. There would be no Ukraine if it weren't for the Soviet Union. If it weren't for
Bullshit.
Lenin and Khrushchev, there would be no Ukraine. And these people are always tearing down the memorials to Lenin and Stalin and Khrushchev and people like that who built modern Ukraine. And he says, so if these people really want to...
They did not build Ukraine. The people of it was the people that did that. What the fuck is... What's up with this one man fucking Ayn Rand bullshit being pushed here?
Yep. He's doing more of this Kaiserism. He's basically saying that Lenin apparently he literally just created Ukraine out of thin air, and it was all just this great man who did it.
This is
the
same shit that Zionists say about fucking Palestine. The same thing.
True.
What the fuck? He's no different from a Zionist. Just change the wording what he says a bit, and you have a Zionist talking. It's not much of a difference.
Maybe we can make that happen. It's a dig. It was brilliant. It's a brilliant dig. Basically, he said
Yeah, okay, a brilliant dig. The fucking people that are gonna suffer as a result of this are gonna be fucking people that wanted nothing to do with this fucking war. People in Ukraine, people in fucking Europe who depend on Russia's exports. This isn't fucking funny, you fucking sociopath. What the fuck is wrong with you, you fucking sick fuck?
He's a straight up neo-Nazi.
You fucking sick bastard. Millions of people are gonna fucking suffer as a result of this, and you fucking think this is a joke?
Yeah.
We created your ass, okay? And, you want to get communism completely out of Ukraine? Well, liquidate Ukraine then, because communism made you guys. That's what he's saying. It's a brilliant dig.
What the fuck? This sounds like kind of shit that Trump would say.
It's true.
What the fuck? Is this Haas that we're hearing here?
I mean, it sounds like it.
What the fuck?
It's a very sophisticated thing, and it's a very good point. And I mean, and with Ukraine threatening Russia, with Ukraine tearing down all the memorials to communism, and he says, I think you really want to decommunize because decommunize, then there's no more Ukraine. That's the point he was making, and that's a fair point. I think it's a fair point, right? And again, I see that misrepresented. I keep seeing this misrepresented online by people are saying, "Oh, it was a fiery anti-communist speech."
It was.
Yeah, what the fuck? Then again, you're an anti-communist, so of course you're going to lie.
No, it was a speech on the history of Russia and Ukraine. It was a speech about how the fall of the Soviet Union was bad. It was a speech about how Ukraine has economically suffered because of the fall of the Soviet Union. It was a speech about how the crazy anti-communist government in Ukraine is kind of hypocritical. I'm not hearing this as like a crazy anti-communist speech. Now, there were some things that people have taken issue with about, the fall of the Tsar, right? Now, the Tsar was actually toppling the February Revolution rather than the October Revolution. There's things you can nitpick about, okay? And that's fine. That's for the Russians to do. It's not for me to do. I'm not Russian. I'm not Ukrainian. I'm not going to get into that. But it was a pretty damn good speech. I would say that Putin is far smarter than any president we've had in the United States in the last 50, 60, maybe even 100 years, okay?
Are you fucking serious? I guess FDR was a moron, Caleb, because by your logic, Putin is smarter than FDR.
Apparently.
The guy that literally saved American capitalism.
He is he's not even a good propagandist. This is just over the top shit. Like, even Goebbels would blush.
Who the fuck is he to criticize people for being anti-American? This is anti-American shit I'm hearing right here. Not that I'm complaining, because fuck America, but saying that Putin is smarter than every U.S. president in the past 100 years? Are you fucking kidding me? Are you going to forget about, FDR, Richard Nixon, anyone that actually has researched Richard Nixon leading up to his election, that he was not a stupid man. Anyone that actually thinks Richard Nixon was stupid doesn't know what they're talking about. Reagan wasn't stupid either. Neither was Bush
Yep.
Senior. What?
Yeah.
It's like this gaslighting. It's like, holy shit. I mean, he's a hypocrite for basically being anti-American here. When he gives people shit for being anti-American when he's doing the exact same thing to fucking suck Putin's dick. Are you getting paid, Caleb, to suck Putin's dick? Because seriously,
I mean, he kind of is at this point.
it's like, fuck. I think the Putin dick is too far in your mouth, Caleb. Maybe you should take it out and actually think a little rationally. Then again, that's too much to ask from a fascist.
Our presidents compared to Putin are young. Okay, Putin is a very intelligent man. This is a really smart man. He means what he says. He says what he means.
He's smart compared to Joe Biden, who has dementia, and Trump. I'll give you that. But he's not smarter than every U.S. president. Because this attack on Ukraine is kind of stupid for Putin, actually.
Yep.
So, no, this is fucking stupid. Trump was smart enough not to start a war. It's like Putin did this out of his own ego. And his people are going to suffer the consequences.
Yep. And most people in Russia do not support this.
No, they don't. But let's wait till Caleb is going to smear the anti-war protesters in Russia. I'm calling it now. And if you're anti-war with this situation, you support U.S. imperialism.
He thinks through things very, very carefully. He's very, very calculated. He knows what he's doing. And there's a reason CNN, they were playing him. He was making his points, and going, chill it. And they pulled him off of there because it was making sense. And he wasn't even reading from cue cards. He wasn't reading from a teleprompter. He wasn't even reading from a goddamn teleprompter. It's a damn good speech, and you can agree with it, you can disagree with it, but it was a damn good speech. It was very intelligent. He made coherent arguments, and the last thing the U.S. government ever wants you to do is go watch it right now. So if you really want to make Biden mad, you really want to make Donald Trump mad, go and watch that speech, because then you'll learn something. That's what I've got to say about that.
I hate to be that guy, but when Joe Biden of all people are more reasonable than Putin in this situation, that the situation's fucked.
Yep.
When Joe Biden of all people is more reasonable, it's like, holy shit, that was just complete mask off on the Burger King man.
And I think that's the end of the video. I think that was a pretty good breakdown we did of
there's a video about
Mr.
Caleb Maupin like having a spat with Kyle Kalinske. Not that I care.
Yeah, I could not care less about that.
I mean, let them fight.
Unfortunately, yep. Two fascists fighting each other. It's like we don't interfere in those things. And basically, if you guys really want to see a good video about this, either go to Jason Unruh's channel or go to Socialism for All, and he's got a good video about what Lenin said about this situation in 1915. And he basically said the defeat of one's own government in an imperialist war. And he's got the audiobook of it. I'll post.
Well, consider we're in the post-Caleb part. I think it's like, what does the future hold for the situation with Ukraine? Because I actually think this exposed how weak, NATO is. That they're all bark and no bite.
Yeah, I think this exposes that we could see a rising Chinese empire come about if the United States continues to collapse the way it is, and China could learn from the mistakes of the American empire, just like how America learned from the mistakes of the British Empire, and be the most evil empire ever. And I know that sounds scary for people to even contemplate, but it's true. It gets more evil as time goes on because they learn from the mistakes.
I don't want to indulge in that thought because I still can't I can't think of any empire as evil as America or Britain.
Yep.
I cannot even consider that.
Yep. Well, unfortunately, I have to go now.
Yeah.
And it's, but I think this was really good video. I think we did a really good breakdown of what a fucking Nazi fascist Caleb is. He is the Baghdad Bob of America. He is pro-war, pro-imperialism, pro-anything that promotes his fascism.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he is. It's a shame. Anyway, later, and thank you for joining on the stream.
Peace, Dark Sonovia. Red salute, everybody.
Red salute. All right. Sorry, this is not as fun as it normally would be, but the situation with Ukraine and Caleb Maupin, it was important that is addressed because Caleb Maupin is the face of the pro-Russia side, at least on social media anyway. But it's still like Caleb Maupin is dangerous because unlike, let's be real, Vosh is a fucking joke. Vosh is just some idiotic fat liberal who lives in California. And what threat does Vosh pose compared to Caleb Maupin? Yeah, Vosh dog whistles to Nazis. Yes, Vosh literally supports genocidal sanctions against Russians. Caleb Maupin, unlike Vosh, can actually do real damage in the real world. Because as communist movements rise, Caleb Maupin can potentially damage those movements by conflating communism with fascism. And I that's why I'm as serious as I am regarding combating Maupinism. Hey, Stone, you want to join in on this? Because it is serious what's going on. Like, despite the stereotypes that the Maupinites wanted to say about Maoists, we're not fucking pro-war. We're anti-war. We fucking despise war, because if you support war, it doesn't matter who it comes from. It doesn't matter where it comes from. It's evil. War is one of the worst evils you could potentially, experience. And the biggest supporters of war are people that don't have to worry about the consequences of such war.
All right.
Me,
There's a lot with this fucking Maupin man that's going down. I mean, like, the bit that really got me pissed off was how he reduced the Irish struggle into a religious spat, and then Marx all of a sudden didn't know about the Irish until the end of his life. Here's a fun little thing about the Irish struggle. So the Fenians, who at the time of Marx was the most radical group of the Irish struggle against the British, most of their leadership were in the first communist international. Great majority of the Irish struggle weren't just communists; there were socialists too, non-communist socialists. But he treats it like there was not no one there who was left. It was just a national struggle, completely diminishing what's going on in Ireland.
it doesn't shock me. Too bad you weren't there earlier. Like when I don't know if you watched the part where me and when I reacted to that one clip you were talking about. I was angry the whole time I watched it, because it's like Caleb is sounding more and more like a Nazi, and I'm sick and tired of being told that we throw around the word Nazi too much, or fascist. You know what? Maybe we shouldn't use another word to like. I'll just call him the Burger King man, or whatever you want to fucking call him.
I mean, he is going face off with these processes. So to rewrite history in such a fashion is a fascistic behavior. Like to look at history as this pointif that you can fucking that you can just altercate for your own motifs. That is a typicality of fascism. We've seen this historical revisionism before with the history of America and slavery. Now we're seeing it go really mask off, where he is basically rewriting the history of the communist struggle and movement. He's basically devoid the importance of Irish people to the communist movement. They're just people that made Marx notice that he was wrong about the national liberation struggle. But the way Caleb words it, it was just a mistake at the end of Marx's life. Like he words it's like, oh, Marx didn't even care about this until like a moment at the end of his life, and then Lenin cared about it too much.
If he's willing to lie about fucking shit with Lenin and Marx, who's to say he won't do the same with American history at some point?
He already has.
No, be more upfront about it. I mean,
Oh yeah.
like that segment I watched, I was like shocked as how anti-American Caleb was at that, you know, clip of that video. He's not as pro-American as he wants to, make us believe. He isn't.
No, he is very pro America. It's about how he's pro America. It's America's going out to a war. Um, so he's trying to push his position. If he wants to push his position, he's going to oppose it because he wants to get in on the anti-war things. War is not the new way to do imperialism. It's China. China's got the new way to do imperialism, and they learned it off the Americans. I mean, like a really good example of this, the neo-colonialism that took over after the British was invented by the British, not the Americans.
Well, I can see,
Imperialists invent their own destruction.
like, I could see Caleb Maupin smearing the anti-war protesters in Russia because he's not anti-war, not by the slightest. I mean, nobody fucking does what Caleb does and supporting invading another sovereign country without fucking being, pro-imperialist. There's no way, no fucking way, no way. Like the way Caleb Maupin talked about it, like basically making a light out of fucking thousands of people dying and millions more being displaced. It's like it's fucking sociopathic behavior. It's fucking disgusting. That's how people can fucking basically fucking see him as a fucking good communist when he's fucking.
I mean, he turned around and
Made my
blamed all the
blood
problems of
boil.
the Soviet Union on Lenin giving people rights. Like, oh yeah, the Soviet Union was killed because Lenin gave people nationalities all of a sudden, claiming, like, he states as if those nationalities never existed, not just Ukraine or Belarus. Like, he's stating it in a way where basically Russia and is the only one that's truly legitimate, and Georgia is treated like it's somewhat recent still anyway, even though Georgia is older than Russia. Georgia is as old as the fucking Roman Empire, if not older. So what the fuck? Like, if he thinks
Nations have
that Georgia
existed
was
for
not an existing nation, where the fuck does he think the cross for my fucking flag of England comes from? The flag of England has a cross on it called the Georgian Cross. I wonder why it's called that.
nations have existed for thousands of years, and as nations are almost as old as man
Well,
itself.
here's the thing with Georgia as well. He calls Georgia Central Asian. Georgia isn't Central Asian. Georgia's West Asian, Transcaucasian, technically European. I mean, you could argue it's West Asian. You could argue it's European. It is not Central Asian. They do have culture that's shared with Central Asia. I mean, it's quite interestingly the one pieces of culture that is shared between Transcaucasia and Central Asia is their like for marijuana, which is
You
pretty
know,
dope.
Caleb Maupin said some things. Another thing that actually really got me, like he basically said our leaders are retarded. It's like, wait, are you saying Americans? Are you saying the average American's retarded? It's like what? It's like, are you? Is there something we should know?
Fuck me, I got special needs, and I can problematically use that word sometimes, and even I wouldn't be so fucking moronic to use it at like the start of a video that's going to be seen by fucking tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, where I'm going to be describing someone and making a serious point.
It's almost as it's almost as if Caleb Maupin's revealing how he truly feels about the average American.
I understand this stress.
No, think about the logic. Think about it. You're supposed to be for the people, right? Why are you fucking calling like most of the population essentially retarded? Because guess what? Most of the fucking leaders who elects them, Americans. And yeah, okay, I'm okay, I have no problems basically saying Americans on average are stupid. But if you can't say that you're for working class people if you're going to call them idiots for voting for whatever person.
To be fair, he's fucking is in a position where it'll end up attracting a lot of people because not the right people, but people like bombastic reactionary language. The types of people that like it aren't really the type of people we should be fostering in that state. Like, you problem with Caleb's logic is Taylorism. You can't formalize a movement off of Taylorism, because if you're just a tail to the worst habits and behaviors of the populace, you've A, set no standards, and B, you set yourself into a landslide where you're going to continuously drop your guard down until eventually your movement is as reactionary as the most reactionary person you've brought into it.
I would argue that Caleb Maupin is on the right of many Trump voters.
I mean, we've got to remember that fascists, they're very good at pretending to be left wing, but they're not as left wing as they seem.
I mean, he's more fucking right wing than your average Trump voter. I mean, I shouldn't be shocked, but I was at the really. It's like, because I haven't seen Caleb in a long time, and seeing and hearing what the things he said, it's just like, I can't believe it that people actually watch this guy. I really can't.
It's surreal sometimes, the shit that comes out of his fucking mouth.
And I don't think Caleb is stupid. That's just one thing. I'm just gonna say he isn't dumb. If he was dumb, he wouldn't be able to do what he did or make the points that he make in the way that he makes them. It's just Caleb Maupin. He's a pathological liar.
He tells enough truth that you'll listen to his lies. Unquestionably, that's the thing. You get two people with Caleb. I got annoyed with him a lot whenever I heard him, so I always used to just think he's a naive geezer, and that's the one. And it's by design. He wants you to either think he's naive and not want to listen to him, or number two, he drops enough fact in between his bullshit that the bullshit would just seem like fact, because everything else he said has been quite reasonable facts. So when he says something outlandish, you just expect it to be one of those moments where he's just having to say something that's outlandish, and those people end up eating his shit until they've got brown teeth.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I'm really disgusted, honestly, because what I've been seeing from Twitter for the past 48 hours, it's just like victims of imperialism, regardless how you feel about, some of these people, like calling them supporters of U.S. imperialism because they don't support the war in Ukraine, or they don't know enough, so they don't want to comment on it, and their only thing they support is class war.
Do you know what? There's a thing for those people. Saddam Hussein was a fascist. Like, I'm not saying that to be like one ton. Like, he is literally known by the Baathists as the fascist section of Baathism. So I am not putting words out of my ass for this. This is quite serious designation, and Saddam Hussein shouldn't have been invaded. I'll see you later, SLR. But the what's it? I wouldn't suggest that we should be invading Saddam Hussein. Actually, the argument we make is that no matter what, Saddam Hussein didn't deserve invading. So why are the standards different now that it's Ukraine? And I mean, I imagine Gengaros mentioned it as well, but one of the CPI members, they fucking posted like, oh, if Russia had put in an anti-American fascist government into Mexico, America has all the right in the world to invade Mexico. Like, this is the logic of these people. They think that if so long as you do certain amounts of interim imperialism, it's fine.
They treat this like a fucking game, despite the fact that the fucking losers are the proletariat in Russia and Ukraine, and the proletariat who depend on Russian exports. It's like, how many millions of lives are going to be ruined because of this?
I mean, think about Germany, Nord Stream 2. That's just been closed. German gas prices, I know that sounds a bit weird for Americans, as in natural gas, not petroleum. is going to be going out the roof. But think about who benefits class wise. I mean, we know the capitalists do, but there's another class that heavily benefits from war, and that's the labor aristocracy. And in a collapsing empire, for people like Caleb, it'd be more beneficial that the US just accepts its position and becomes a lower empire to China and Russia while it still is as big as it is. Because there's two ways it goes. It either gets smaller and becomes a bitch, or it becomes a bitch. There's not really any other direction for the US now. It's not going to be the hegemonic power at the end of this conflict.
I'm just sickened, and not to mention this the amount of it's on. I'm actually more disgusted with those who blindly support Russia than those who support Ukraine. Because let's be honest, fascists are going to support Ukraine. We could expect them to do that. Open neo Nazis.
But when communists, people who are supposed to have a principle to be against imperialist squabbles and stand for the fucking working people of the world, like that is disgusting that they would even fucking think that this is some game that we can play sports with.
It's like, you know, communists are supposed to be anti-war. We are supposed to be by our principles being anti-war, because war benefits no one but the ultra wealthy.
People like to cite World War II. Let me use a good example of World War II. Roger Waters, one of the members of, well, was one of the members of Pink Floyd. His father died in World War II in Italy in 1943. Now, his father refused to join the war until 1941. Why do you think that was? So the reason he didn't do that until 1941 was because his father was a communist, and he did not want to join that war for it was an imperialist squabble, and on the principles of Lenin, he would not join a squabble between imperialist powers. The only reason he joined the war was because the Nazis had invaded the bastion of socialism, the Soviet Socialist Republics. He would not join the war otherwise, and he died in a war on the opposite front for the only reason he joined was because the Nazis had invaded the Soviet Union. Um, it's a sort of a blessed sort of imagery that people need to take in. You don't support these wars at all. That was Lenin's point. Like, even if we're gonna fucking, even if we're gonna lose, I mean, all you should ever do is defend your country from being invaded. That's all you should ever do.
Yeah. And it's fucking disgusting. You have, like, being anti-war is now supporting U.S. imperialism. It's like, it's no wonder the fucking United States fucking left is a fucking joke. I'm just gonna say this right now. So you fucking idiots. I don't care if I sound like I'm gaslighting. Fuck you. It's like the Russian proletariat know what's gonna fucking happen because they fucking live on the borders. They have to actually suffer the consequences of a war in Ukraine.
I mean, Russia's already having anti-war protests. Where are ours?
Yes, it's like, you fucking cowards. All of you are fucking cowards. Every single time there's a fucking war, where's the mass demonstrations? Where's the fucking demonstrations for the genocide in Yemen, Palestine, Syria? Any fucking war that fucking starts, they protest in America, they last for a few weeks, and then they fucking, nobody even fucking knows about it. The last time
I've been to Palestinian demonstrations, by the way, and 99% of the people there are Arab.
It's like the only time white people ever fucking protested America in a war, really, in mass numbers, as big as the Vietnam War, is when they were losing the war and they couldn't, and they actually had to suffer the consequences of a war.
Do you know what's even worse is the fact that so many people have like a nostalgia for literally like what was blatantly people only protesting because they had to go and fight it. Like, they weren't protesting it because, oh no, the Vietnamese people. I mean, there are probably people there who did think like that, but most of these people were just thinking about themselves.
Yeah, But they're self-serving fucking pieces of shit. I'm sorry if you actually fucking like the I have okay. I even know I am critical of Russia. I have nothing but love for for the Russian culture and the people of Russia because they've been through some of the worst conditions in the 20th century. They've suffered through the not a genocide with the Nazis, a genocide by their own government backed by the United States. They know what fucking war does to to them. They fucking lived it. They have family members that have survived these wars. They fucking know it. They're not like Americans who most of them will never see a battlefield in their lives. I have nothing but respect for the Russian proletariat, and my heart goes to those people who are protesting against Putin in this action.
And I mean, there's like a real big thing here because people are going on a rah rah this and that of us being anti-war. It's principle, Ukraine, fascist, all that. Okay, if we're against all of the wars, which means we protest Russia invading Ukraine, the US invading Ukraine, the US invading Russia, Russia invading Poland, we're against Ukraine invading anyone. If we're against all the possibilities of war and invasion that could occur at this point in time, it would be logical to suggest that we're against the process of war beginning, and if there's protests already going in Russia, protests go on in US, protests go on in Britain, France, Germany, that's more pressure to stop the war. It's not like it's going to be over pressuring one side and then the other side is going to go in. Also, wouldn't us being opposed to war at least stop the US? So that would still not. Regardless, a process of anti-war would destabilize the what the imperialists want. The imperialists want this because if they didn't want this, they wouldn't be mobilizing their fucking troops. They all have the ability to talk this down. They all have the ability to finance this down if hegemony is in solid place. It obviously isn't. The US's hegemony is slipping. We're going to see these empires bully it out. Because of that, they wouldn't even be this conflict wouldn't even be starting like this if the US still had its hegemony. A second thing I like to add on, people keep seeming to be treating this like it's fucking like it's World War II, the Soviet Union fighting the Nazis. I really must hope people understand the difference between a socialist country fighting its arch enemy of fascism, and even then, I wouldn't support them just wantonly invading other people's countries unless they are actually dealing with a threat, because you're still you're demolishing the right of self-determination. The Soviet Union didn't start going in 1924, 25, going, well, the Polish government next to us, we need to go in there and change their government. No, do you know what they wanted off the Polish? They wanted the land back that had been stolen from them. They weren't going, okay, well, we need to figure out how we're going to invade Poland and force the Polish government to change. That's for the Polish people. That's for the Ukrainian people. But you know what they did do, which Russia could have done this too, is that they said, okay, well, if this movement starts, we'll support it. We won't go in, we won't change the society, we won't invade the country. But if they need aid, we'll send them aid. If they need support, we'll send them support. Mongolia, they needed support in their revolution. We sent them support. 1926, 27.
I mean, this thing with Russia and Ukraine, it's just fascists versus fascists. That's what this is.
And
none of these people will talk about okay, there are neo-Nazis in Ukraine. I've mentioned this multiple times. But has anyone talked about the neo-Nazis in Russia?
Yeah, like Vladimir Putin. He's a fascist little fuck. But you've also got the fact that the quote-unquote Communist Party is a controlled opposition by the Russia First party. But, I mean, here's the thing about Ukraine. So what Caleb's getting on about, like, Ukraine didn't exist, Stalin dropped the borders, they added this, they added that. So here's how Ukraine is broken up demographic for a nice simple history. And here's a little hint. West Ukraine, it isn't German. They have German influences, like most of the Western Slavic fucking region. But welcome to being a Western Slav. So West Ukraine is Ukrainian Slavic. That was easy, wasn't it? East Ukraine is not just Russian. It's Russo-Ukrainian. They are a distinct group. Look up history. I shouldn't have to tell people that Ukraine not only existed before Soviet Union, it was a bigger territory before the Russian Empire. I don't know if people know about this, but the Russian Empire existed, and it used to annex land before it started incorporating it into its empire. Um, and I mean, fuck. If we're going to get on about anything, Lenin didn't give enough national autonomy to groups to a degree, because Russia is not very Russian when you get past fucking halfway east. When you go halfway east in Russia, it's not so Russian anymore. It's more Siberian and Mongolian and Far Eastern in general. I mean, it's the many tribes of Russia that aren't the tribe of the Rus, completely ignored. And Caleb's analysis too, he just goes on about Belarus and Ukraine, filling your head with a loaded argument that that they shouldn't exist, and then does whataboutism in the end where he throws his arms up in the air, going, "I'm not Belarus, I'm not Ukraine, I don't know."
It's like, yeah, it's typical of a white American.
Lenin had a thing for that though. He said, "No investigation, no right to speak."
Caleb has no desire to, because he's a fucking Nazi. I mean, the more I fucking hear Caleb, the more he sounds like Hitler and Mussolini.
I mean, I give a pretty basic reading just on like demographics, and it was basic as fuck. But if I can give that basic as fuck reading of the Ukrainian demographic, Caleb surely knows that. I couldn't know more than Caleb about Ukraine and Russia and Belarus. The guy wrote a book on like 400 years of history or some shit, 300 years of history regarding socialism. I don't know. It's that wanker builders book, city builders. Um, Bastard. But you know, a guy who studies so much on history and he can't even tell the truth on simple history about Ukraine, a simple history about Belarus. Um, I mean, if nationalities weren't meant to be distinguished, they wouldn't have been distinguished, Caleb. Lenin didn't run around and look for Stalin to write the national question because Stalin is a Georgian. Like, he's just the guy who wrote the book at the time. It, overcomplicating it. I think we're having connectivity issues. Please stand by. I now dominate the media space. What am I going to do? Uh, uh, Churchill noises.
Mike, I guess the Caleb cult was trying to stop this stream.
You were suppressed by the Maupin.
I will not be shocked for a second if Caleb and his fucking sycophants swarm this stream after, it's over, because let's just be honest, they don't like people, speaking out against them. They don't. They don't. They just want you to shut up, know your place.
I'm a stressful guy to try and raid because I will just do all I can to not only answer honestly, but also use honest truth to be a cunt.
It's like, if for those of you who are like, I know some of you may be sick of hearing about Caleb Maupin, but it's important because the Ukraine situation has basically Caleb is unmasking himself more. Like when you hear Caleb Maupin and you hear the likes of Richard Spencer and Stefan Montague or any other, fascists that are openly fascist, cultured thug, Laura Servan, when you hear the way they talk and their talking point, their demeanor, the way they talk about nations, it doesn't sound that much different from them. It really doesn't.
I can't remember whether it was Richard Spencer, but there is an open fascist in America that is very fond of Caleb.
Of course.
I mean, it's interesting. I know that there are a lot of Mussolini-like fascists that like Caleb. Culture Thug is actually an example of that, isn't he?
And the classic, guilt by association isn't a thing. When I hate to break that to you, but if you associate yourself with nothing but fascists, people are going to come to the conclusion correctly that you likely believe in the things that the people that you're platforming do.
Yeah, I mean, like, because the argument they're trying to use to hide behind so that they can just cultivate reactionaries is that where else are you going to start? And it's like, okay, you just do start with reactionaries. You do have to convince those people over, but you don't do that by becoming their ally instantly, dragging them in and giving them all the sort of all the leeway in the world to be shitheads. Like the way you do that is you engage with them and you pull their ideas forward. And I mean, Caleb is really going to try and sort of inclinate upon Mexico as his argument. That's going to be his crutch argument for this, because he knows that most reactionary Americans, if you turned around to him and you said, okay, but if there were fascists in Mexico, we'd have to go in there and deal with that. Because not only is that a normal American mentality, America has been dropping in people with fucking guns over the last 30 years. With the drug enforcement, 40 years actually now, sorry. With the Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA.
I mean, Americans don't fucking know shit about fucking what it's like to wake up with bombs dropping or shells like firing, or dealing with panic attacks or PTSD because you basically grew up in a war zone. It's like, no, they don't fucking care or know about this sort of thing. And you know what? This sounds fucked up. Part of me wishes that Americans would actually get a taste of their own medicine, so they wouldn't be so eager to support fucking war. War is like one of the greatest is, in my opinion, the greatest evil in this world. War makes a monster out of all of us.
How do these people operate? War is peace. Freedom is strength. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength.
Yeah, that's the mentality. So they're like, oh my god, this is like literally 1984, and I hate fucking mentioning that because I hate George Orwell, but it's completely accurate.
I do, but it's one of those moments where the guy who wrote the book, putrid piece of shit. I'd bring him back from the dead just to shoot him, but it has a similar ring to some of the times when Trotsky said something good. It's like, okay, this piece, obviously some angsty piece that's tried to be directed at the Soviet Union, but it doesn't work well for the Soviet Union. I mean, you could argue that there's critiques that could be made about the Soviet Union regarding its overextensive strain on the populace and the public, and I'd be one of those people who make them criticisms, but 1984 is way more applicable to capitalism even at that time. And I mean, what was a great example of it was him literally being one of those metal man changing history with a big eraser. um, once you disappear, no one will ever miss you. He was the one doing that in 1948 when he was reporting. Well, it was 1945 when he was reporting communists to the British Secret Service. And mind you, when he would describe black communists, he would call them just N-word male, N-word female. Everyone else got a really nice long description. Um, uh, 1948 revolution in Britain was prevented from occurring because of George Orwell. Orwell and Maupin have a lot in common, really. Call themselves socialists all the time, but I mean, fucking hell, Orwell himself was directly working with the Secret Service. Caleb might not even be that bad, but he's bad enough. Hey. But doublethink is a process used by fascists. Never know what to believe. The Maupinites sabotaged us again. I used to say war is the greatest corruption inducement in this world and every other world. Yeah. One of George Orwell's comments about someone was just simply German, LMAO. That's the disgusting way in which he defines and describes people. And on war is the greatest corruption inducement in this world. Yeah, I mean it's when you look at like how war is operated in capitalism, because it's not an absolute necessity for finance capital to flux out. Willkommen, comrades. I don't know any more German, so don't expect any more out of me. So I mean, capitalists, they benefit a lot from war, but they can get a lot of their benefits as well for all the mediations of finance capital and how in which they can invest around the world. The class that is intrinsically and cannot live without the military-industrial complex, they're intrinsically tied to it, is the labor aristocracy. A class that's sort of born out of capitalism, out of imperialism, remodeling of the feudal aristocracy as a core basis of this class, and those in which you descend from the feudal aristocracy typically sit within the petit bourgeois sector of the labor aristocracy, because as I think it was Engels who put it, but it might be Lenin. Petit bourgeoisie is the intersection between the intermediary class that intersects between the bourgeoisie and the aristocracy of labor. Complicated, I know. It's not really a solid class. It's one of those fuck boy classes. But the labor aristocracy's class interests are intrinsically tied to imperialism, and they have an intrinsic relationship with the military-industrial complex. Gramsci was the first person to lay this shit down. And so when we see these times of crisis, even when America's in a position where its empire is going to be the losing empire in this, it's still beneficial for the aristocracy to push war for the short term and the immediate benefits, but also it's the way that they move their class interests forward. If war is going to destroy America, so be it. They can push neo-feudalism on top of the system and bring the labor aristocracy into a position more akin to its feudal aristocratic class interests that still exist within the petit bourgeois element that dominates the organization of this class. I mean, the way that I put it is the labor aristocracy, the majority of them, don't descend from feudal aristocracy, but they act like they do. They pretend like they do. They feel like they have this sort of innate deserving of better control over capitalism on an individualistic platform. So they want to be as powerful as the capitalists, but with the class relationship of a labor aristocrat, or some of them actually just want to throw that away and become capitalists themselves. But there's when you see the movements of people like Adolf Hitler and Mussolini and the other fascists, and you look at all of their class positions where they come from, you'll find an interesting correlation that the people who merge the capitalists into state power and bring what I call King's law, where the state becomes a direct empowered body to tell exactly the capitalists, you do this, you do that. There's not the leeway in it that's normally left with liberalism, where the state more advises the capitalists on what to do with the market. It doesn't tell them straight up what to do. In fascism, the labor aristocracy and we're talking specifically the political sector. So once again, petty bourgeois sector of labor aristocracy get to literally tell the capitalists absolutely everything that they have to do, and those who don't comply with it can go as far as having all of their wealth taken off them, or even just being outright killed. So, I mean, the way that I end up delineating these things is you've got liberalism, class consciousness of the bourgeoisie, fascism, class consciousness of the labor aristocracy, socialism, class consciousness of the proletariat. Because we've got to understand that consciousness of class involves perspective. And one's class interests, one's class consciousness does not change because you want to think like a lumpen proletariat or a proletariat. It changes when one experiences the material conditions of that class. And that's why the labor aristocracy will never breed revolution. They'll always divulge into fascism unless they become servants of the lumpen proletariat struggle.
I agree with that, actually. And I don't know. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir when I basically say that, war is bad. That shouldn't be a controversial statement. Should it be?
I mean, Hakeem had to come out and wipe our asses on Twitter.
It's like, Hakeem, whatever your problems with Hakeem are, anyone, whoever your problems are, Hakeem gave a good analysis on this Ukraine situation. And unlike Americans who don't have to suffer the consequences of a war, he actually, with experience of actually suffering from war himself, he gave an analysis, and Caleb Maupin, the fucking ghoul, has the nerve to fucking call him a supporter of imperialism against Iran. It's like, what the fuck? I never heard or seen once Hakeem support any aggression against Iran. Have you guys?
I mean, what is he even referring to specifically? Like, is he referring to the the JPCLO, or not JPCLO, is the joint Iranian deal thing, the joint Iranian deal, that he was never against that. He's never said anything about that. I've never really heard him comment on Iran, and if he's said anything, because I've spoken with Hakeem, it DM nonetheless, but I've spoken with him before, and he's a sound lad, and he'll give straight and very descriptive stuff. He's not got any qualms or disagreements. If he's going to say anything that might be in any direction, it'd be one Caleb would like. He would have supported Iran's motions to go against the deal when it was broken against them, like any else of us did. The anti-communist rhetoric against Lenin, the Bolsheviks, and the USSR that the Russian leadership has been using in this situation is unacceptable. This is inter-imperialist rivalry. Exactly.
By the way, anyone who has never heard about Comrade Ray's, he makes some really good videos on his channel. I'd highly recommend you check his videos out. Everything that he puts out is gold. He does great content, especially about the Soviet Union. If you're looking for an alternative to Otto Bolshevik, I would recommend him. He's great. Thank you. I didn't expect you to come here, so I just wanted to give you a shout out while you're here.
I swear, I've either watched something from his before. I don't know if he was around like a couple of years ago, or I've spoke with him before.
He actually did a Marxist analysis on Star Wars.
I'll have to watch that.
Well, it's not
Um,
on YouTube. Actually, it's not. You have to watch it on another. He has a link to it on because of copyright.
yes, the good old copyright.
It's the
Fuck.
original trilogy, though. It's not only. It's not the prequels. It's just the originals.
I.
Like one of his best videos, actually, when he did top 5 films of U.S. propaganda, like he like Red Dawn, like it's great. I don't want to spoil what's in his videos. Everyone watch his content.
Have you seen the fucking the guns they made up for the OG at Red Dawn though? Like they got some real guns, American guns, and they made them finished too, and they made them look Soviet. It is an American propaganda film, but that's a way to tickle my testes when you do cool little things like that. Um, but I will say, so interesting on the anti-communist rhetoric is that we see the Maupin crowd and all that jump behind it. I mean, Maupin basically turned around and said that Lenin's granting people nationality, and he didn't decide that these people were nations. These people were nations before the Russian Empire, and they still were distinctly nations at the end of it. But he basically slanders the right of self-determination and throws that out of the window. Putin made a distinct point about the right of self-determination being an idiotic idea, and Caleb's jumping behind it, going, "This is the most intelligent speech ever. This is what's it? Putin has made a more intelligent speech than any U.S. president." He said in the last 100 years. So much for Roosevelt. Then, fucking, he likes to lick ass Roosevelt until it comes to lick ass and Putin, and then Putin is the most intelligent man ever because his contract says he has to say so. And yet,
Yeah.
Hakim was bombed. Like he went out one time, comes home, and his house was bombed. And if he weren't at home, he would be dead. Vosh laughed at that story.
Well, Vosh and Caleb Maupin, there's hardly a difference between the two.
Well, I know the difference. One is actually organizing in real life. The other's called Vosh. Fat pedophile.
Oh God, fuck. I I hate Vosh, but yeah, I do agree. Caleb is actually more dangerous because he does have connections in the real world. He could do, and he's doing actual damage. Actually,
Because I mean, they're both petty bourgeois. I mean, here's an interesting thing for people to take because might not have seen me trash him on my channel. So Caleb is the son of a non-profit board member who has been the board member on several non-profits. And I don't know if you guys have heard about how scandalous non-profits are, but non-profit board members can earn on small charities can be earning 100 grand a year. And this guy was running on some pretty big charity stuff. I mean, when Caleb was a kid, he was traveling into a place like Nicaragua and Honduras on business trips. Just after the US dollar had been accepted by this country. So I'll let you guys, because Caleb won't tell us the full ins and outs, try and figure out what kind of business trips those are. But his dad's a non-profit board member worker of big charities that he's been the board member of. So that could easily be $250,000 a year jobs. Well, sorry, £250,000 a year jobs. That's more in dollars. I don't know what that is in USD. Just think of a bigger number. It's probably somewhere in the 300,000s, 400,000s, but nonetheless, that's more than any prime minister or president earns a year. And they're undeniably petty bourgeois. I think we could all agree that the prime minister or president of a country is undeniably petty bourgeois.
yep, definitely.
So it's Caleb has a lot of capital power because of this. I mean, especially if his father has ever given him any money down, and he's also a news presenter at RT. And they're top line reporters and people like that. They're earning at least 100 grand a year. Hey, I get 5 grand a year. Like Caleb Maupin, live on 5 grand a year. Try it.
I doubt he would be able to last a day. But I don't like having a stream dedicated to Caleb Maupin. But I think it's relevant because the Ukraine situation, thousands of people listen to Caleb Maupin. The reason I'm not bringing up Haas, because Haas, like fucking Bosch, is terminally online and a fucking
Yeah,
joke.
they are like the same side of each. They're not even two sides of the same coin. They're just the same side of the same coin. What about the French government? I mean, can someone like? Because here's the thing with the French. Does anyone know a difference between Le Pen and Macron? Because I'm struggling to find it. I really am struggling to find a difference between Le Pen and Macron. Um, no, the French government are trying to mediate within this situation. I feel that there's a part of the EU that's saying to not be in NATO anymore. I feel that they want out of the squabbles because then they don't have to side with the US when something like this occurs. They can just stay neutral, or even more so, join another side. The EU is so they're joint on trade with China, and they're also they're also not far behind in capital. Um, they are a big imperial conglomerate that has enough power to start sticking it to the US. And I feel that may be one of the processes they go. You may also even see France wanting to leave the EU because, just like Britain, France still has a huge empire that it can tap into. And that's why Britain left the EU. I mean, you wouldn't leave the EU just to join up with the US. You'd leave the EU to either join up with the US with all your remaining empire and form something out of that, or lead the EU to do your own thing in spite of the US. Because there's two ways to go: mollycoddle the US into your bitch empire, or become a big enough empire that the US becomes your bitch empire. That's how imperialism works. It's a very contestive ideology.
I don't think the European Union has that much longer. I give it 20, 30 years tops before it completely collapses.
It'll last longer than the US.
Well, I mean
So
generous.
the EU the EU is a logical process here of imperialism. These imperialist powers are been and gone. They're not the hegemony anymore. It's quite hard for them to become the hegemony off their own steam. Most empires didn't form a commonwealth like the British did, which was a nice little card in the pocket for the British Empire for them to bring their horrific tyranny back. It actually terrifies the fuck out of me that Kanzuk is such a possible thing. But the EU has a really big advantage. It certainly did when when Britain was in there as well, because there was three big empires conglomerating it, not just two now. Unless you count the Spanish as a big empire, lol. But the EU, as Lenin put it, is a counter to American interests, and that the EU. He said the EU would form when American hegemony is on its way out. Not really when it formed. It formed a bit earlier than that, but the EU has become a bigger player as American hegemony has run out. And as Lenin said, the United Nations of Europe will be used to contest American imperialist hegemony when it starts to lose that hegemony. Because Lenin was, for some unknown reason why, literally a century ahead of himself on certain things. Because I don't know who stuck a rocket up that man's ass, but it fucking went far.
Or I think Lenin observed trends throughout using historical materialism, and he just saw, the acceleration of the collapse of empires. I believe that's what happened. Actually, Lenin was a very smart man. Really smart.
Indeed.
I mean, he predicted the fall of the U.S. empire before it actually, became the hegemonic power and the reemergence of the British Empire.
Yeah, I mean the American Empire was still in its infancy when he was making these analyses. America was like was it like 90% rural at the time of Lenin or something like that, 80% rural. America was not very industrial until like 1945. I hope people are aware of this. Like Roosevelt electrified the country. Um,
I would argue that America was an empire from the very start. It just wasn't a powerful empire until after World War One, where it started to actually pose a threat to British hegemony.
yeah, 1927 was when that process really started to kick off. But I mean, World War One was an example of the US starting to sniff its nose into that direction. It's just World War One was more of a showdown between the British and the Germans, and the French asked for help a bit. Um, the I will say one thing though: Lenin and Stalin were ahead on their time on many issues. They're also very much behind on a lot of issues. I mean, the easiest one that I can pull out of my ass on Lenin would be his overuse of the word "backwards" to describe communities that are in a worse position or that are in a feudal position. It's completely derogatory in a colonial fashion to see those that are in a worse material condition as backwards. Um, very, very colonial mindset. And I mean, Stalin limited himself too much by being this follower of Lenin. They bigged up Lenin too much. They made Lenin into this godlike creature. It's not how you deal with someone who is just a man. And mine Lenin. Most of Lenin's shit wasn't just Lenin's ideas. It was Lenin writing stuff that took hours and hours of discussing with comrades. I mean, if you ever see it, a picture of Lenin writing, half of them have a comrade in the picture. Half of them don't, sure, but half of them have a comrade in the picture. And that's because Lenin typically had someone around with him when he was writing, and he was typically writing about discussions he had had and that he was consolidating on these ideas. No one man ever comes up with anything. One man theory has been one of the biggest crippling things to Marxism in regards to how we organize, because it creates dogmatism and too much reverence for these certain small handful of writers and leaders, when we have fucking hundreds if not thousands of people who have contributed like with written books to people for people to read, but people only want to look at a sort of small selection of literature and successes. Um, and I would say that there's a Eurocentrism to Marxism Leninism that pisses me off.
I mean, yeah, I don't know what more to say though about, because I've said everything I could potentially talk about regarding Ukraine and the Burger Man in general. Everything I say, I'll be repeating myself. We'll all have to wait and see how this turns out. No to war.
Yeah.
I know
Well,
I've already said this already, but I'll say it again. No to war. It shouldn't be controversial to say no to war. It shouldn't be controversial to not choose a side in this inter-imperialist conflict. Russia has its own fascists, its own Nazis in the country. Ukraine, yes, it's worse than Russia. It is objectively worse. But does that justify invading the country? Does it? does it? Because
No.
ultimately, in the end, who's going to win? It's not going to be like the Russian people. It ain't going to be the Ukrainian people. These same neo-Nazis, they're going to do what they always do. That, you know, they will flee the country and, you know, use it as an opportunity to spread their propaganda like they did with the Ukrainian fascists in World War II. They'll do what they've always done. Do you think most of these Ukrainian fascists, do you think they're going to stay in the country? Doubtful. They're going to flee because fucking fascists are cowards.
I mean, people need to really expect World War Three at the moment. Capitalism, whenever it's in crisis, World War ends up being around the corner. We saw it with the Great Depression of 1910. We saw it with the Great Depression of 1927. Why would we not see it for the Great Depression of 2019? We are in a Great Depression right now. I hope people are aware of this. I hope people are aware that the shortages are not because of COVID and the crisis of economy and according to COVID, because even Sky News fucking got that at the start of the pandemic. A quote from Sky News for people to understand. To blame the socioeconomic crisis that we're in now on the pandemic would be the tendency of someone who has gone mad. The crisis we're in now is because capitalism went into a Great Depression. Doesn't justify invading the country. Neither the Russian or the Ukrainian people will benefit. I mean, the labor aristocracy of Russia will benefit. The proletariat of Russia, though, they will be sent to die, and then they'll get nothing in return. They'll be left out to dry. The world is voted for euthanasia with a Y. YOUTH, euthanasia. We've been hung out to dry.
Yeah. And a lot of like right wingers will be right wingers. At least I'm talking about who are open right wingers. They'll support Ukraine or Russia because that's what they do. Because, fascists will support fascists. In this situation, there's just no lesser of two evils. If Russia were communist and they were doing this, you might have an argument for lesser evilism here, but it isn't lesser evilism because there's two fascist countries waging war against each other, and the people that everyday citizens. Not all Ukrainians are fascists, just like not all Russians are Nazis as well. Not all of them are, but those who will always be the victims of these wars will always fucking suffer. And you're no friend of the proletariat if you support either side. The only side you should be on is the proletariat in both countries. We don't fucking support the proletariat murdering each other because some capitalist oligarch in fucking Russia, has some sort of fucking ego trip and wants to fucking flexes his muscles because the fucking West is weak. No. People's lives are going to be forever changed because of this. How many people have to die for people to actually do the right thing? It actually takes more courage to actually say no to war. It doesn't matter if it's America doing it, or Russia, or China, or Turkey, or any country in the future that starts a war. You don't support either side because who benefits from these wars? Is it the working class of Russia and Ukraine, or the aristocracy in those countries, the oligarchs?
The bourgeoisie.
The bourgeoisie are always the people that benefit from these wars. And I'm sick and tired of people like like the Maupin cult, Haas, labeling every fucking communist as an ultra leftist, claiming we glorify violence, we fucking are obsessed with violence, we want nothing to but commit acts of violence. Yet what they're doing right now is exposing their fucking hypocrisy.
I
It's
mean,
only violence if it's against people that are in a benefactor position. It's not the fucking victims. And yeah, the Ukrainians are the fucking victims by their government and by Russia. They don't win
yeah,
regardless
I
who.
mean, have they heard about some of the conditions in Ukraine? Some people don't have like proper running water for massive chunks of the year and no hot water for most of the year. Like, they are being fucked by everyone, but being bombed is not going to make their water run any better.
It's like, it sickens me. And when people try to justify, oh, I support Russia because they're killing Nazis. You know what? I hate Nazis. I think they should all be fucking shot. But you want to, but you want to know who else is going to fucking suffer? It ain't going to be most of the Nazis. A lot of the Nazis are going to flee the country.
Oh shit!
It's like they're not going to fucking stick around. A good majority of these people, they're going to fucking leave.
What is it with the upper class and being more attentive to suicide than the lower class? This is going to be a problem of alienation.
I'm
But
just serious. Like,
but I mean,
regarding,
so. But I was just gonna say one thing as well is that like we're talking about like proper Eurocentric sort of war going on in here, and this sort of Eurocentric mentality that people have that because it's in Europe, it's fine for us to mollycoddle and manhandle it. Um, we shouldn't be allowed to manhandle any nation. Like, I mean, we have problems within European nations themselves that are problematic on this gander. I mean, the French and British oppression of Celtic regions, the Germans' oppression of their own people. I mean, culturally, I mean, on a colonial relationship, Lower German and High German are in contest with each other. Actually, Hitler was one of the biggest pushers of High German over Low German and crushing the people of Germany who speak Low German, and Germany today sticks to that processy of being a cunt to people who are Low German.
it just sickens me. It's like I just feel like they don't see Ukrainians as human. That's what I see. They refuse to see them as human because they see there's a lot of Nazis in Ukraine. There's a lot more Nazis in America, but should we fucking invade America because it has Nazis?
We're waiting for America to destroy itself.
Yes. But I'm just saying that people don't see Ukrainians as human. They don't.
Well, I mean, there's this common thing amongst communists to disregard Ukrainians because they were Ukrainian fascists during World War II. I hope people are aware there was a fifth column in Russia as well. There was fascists in Russia during World War II as well, people who betrayed. Yes, there's the whole West Ukraine thing. Does people not know that when you have Trotsky go in, and I hate the fact that people go, oh, the only good thing Trotsky does is when he went to Ukraine. No, it wasn't. He went into Ukraine and he massacred people. The Ukrainians, no Trotsky, and not, this isn't a modern name. This is a name from the time, Butcherer of Ukraine. How do you get a title, Butcherer? Even if you were just going in it's because you were harsh against the anarchists. You do not get a title butcherer if you were dealing with things as a proper communist. You have slaughtered people. And I know he was going about things like that because he was destroying synagogues with his Red Army when he was traveling through Ukraine and Russia during the Civil War. Destroying synagogues. Like he was an anti-Semitic Semite, self-hating Jew, as my mate Net puts it. The fucking what's it? The so Ukraine had a lot of reasons that would encourage people to go fascist. Not saying that they're fucking entirely justified in doing that, but you got to see how it's understandable that people would want to go against the system that Trotsky was the leader of the army of, after they butchered people to the point where they gave the guy the name Butcherer. Um, I, the, it's obviously you're going to get a higher flock of Nazis there, but to think that Ukrainians themselves are just innately like that, pure racism. They're not
That's
innately
like
like that.
that's like saying Americans are inherently Nazis because America has a huge Nazi population.
But but America, because what people do with Ukraine is what I'm saying is they're saying inherently like Ukraine as a culture is fascist. With America, you could say that because America doesn't actually have its own culture. It's a settler colonial state that steals Native American culture, steals African culture, and then enforces over this really what's it? Uh, it's like they watered down European culture with as much whiteness as possible. So they whitened up what is already very, I mean, white itself, whiteness is an Anglo-Saxon invention. So they managed to whiten up what is already quite white. Um, with Ukraine has a very distinct history and culture, but the common joke you'll hear communists say, and a lot of them mean it when they fucking say it. They'll say that Ukrainians aren't people. Yes, they fucking are. A distinct people with a distinct history. And these people are doing this all because of one time in the middle of a fucking war. Are they missing the fact that so many Ukrainians, not just East Ukrainians, before they go, oh, those are the Russo Ukrainians, rah, 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 no, West Ukrainians too. The Ukrainian resistance did not choose which side of Ukraine it picked to fucking recruit from. It was very much a Ukrainian resistance force. Was formed of Ukrainian people. It was Ukrainian people fighting fascists. It wasn't like, oh, West Ukraine just annexed itself and all were happy jolly with the Nazis. I mean, you must really question a situation when there are people celebrating Nazi tanks entering their towns and cities, though, as to what was going on in Ukraine at the time.
Ukraine has a very complicated history, a long history, and a lot of people just do not want to investigate it. Now, I don't know a lot about Ukraine. What I know from what other people have said or what from videos I've watched over the years about Ukraine. So I don't have in-depth knowledge on Ukraine. I'm only speaking of Ukraine in this particular stream and why it's such an important topic, because war is something that affects all of us. And Americans are not prepared, or neither are like most Europeans, for a world war. War for like a majority of the West has been forgotten. America hasn't really had a war in centuries on its soil. And no, Pearl Harbor doesn't really count. Pearl Harbor was like not even part of America at that time.
It was.
Whatever you want to call it. It's
Hawaii.
I know, but mainland America has never experienced the fucking hellish wars that Russia, France, England, all of Europe was a war zone.
Last one was against the Spanish Empire in 1905.
It's like all of Europe was a fucking war zone in World War I and World War II. You had an entire continent that has had two wars in a row. Fucking, you have parts of fucking countries that were like nothing will grow and hasn't grown for over a century because of World War I.
I mean, I was speaking to a man who didn't meet his father until he was 7 because of World War II 2 days ago.
Wait, what?
Speaking to a man who didn't meet his father until he was 7 because of World War II.
Oh.
His mother was nearly bombed. Well, no, she was bombed, but she survived in the war, and then she died when he was like 12. Um, yeah, I mean, he fucking worked his ass off in factories, he grew up and all that. But I mean, like, you know, plenty of Americans who didn't meet their fathers until they were of age during that time, but they didn't see the buildings being bombed like this geezer I was speaking to did. You know, he grew up watching Rob All About. At the school he went to when he was a kid, used electric shock therapy to punish kids.
It's like Americans. I'm mostly speaking about Americans here because the Americans that support, the war with fucking Ukraine. I'm referring to. It doesn't matter who they are. Americans are fucking cowards. They really are cowards. They don't fucking. They have never. Oh yeah, they may have a family member that may actually fight in a war. That's nothing compared to actually living in a war zone, constantly hearing gunshots, constantly hearing, bombs being dropped, constantly hearing helicopters. Like America, what they experience is nothing, and Americans aren't mentally prepared for World War III. They're not. And if you ask me, I don't think America can win a world war, even with the draft. Because think about it. Americans are one of them are not only physically unhealthy, they're mentally unhealthy too. How are you going to, have a soldiers that were a good chunk of the population are obese? How are you going to do that? America can't win a world war. Capitalism in its own hubris, fed its population like processed food that makes people fat, destroys their mental health, and then at a time where they need a war in order to actually keep their empire afloat, guess what? You don't have enough bodies to keep a war going. Yeah, you may be able to get people in certain sections of the country who are not as, bad. It's not as, unhealthy, but that's not enough indefinitely. America would have to, resort to nuking, whatever country they're going to war with because they can't win.
No. What they do is they'll do what the British did. You ever heard of the Boer War? So the Boer War, the second one specifically, which was 1900 summit to 1908. Actually, may have started in the late 1800s, but it ended about 1908. It's just before World War One. Britain had to evaluate its entire armed forces again and force dietary programs and straighten out its army for our next conflict, because we figured that basically with the Boer War we had to put as many people as we could into service. Interesting that World War One ended up being that conflict too. And what ended up happening was that we had not enough fit men, and we were putting in fuck me, Winston Churchill was in the army, and he's a fucking chunky fucking monkey. So you got to think about the type of people we were fielding. We were also fielding people who were scrawny as fuck, who didn't even have enough food. America has a similar problem. I mean, where is its cream of its crop going to come from? You're going to have lumpen people who got nowhere to go. They're going to join the army. You've got proletarian people whom are brought on by propaganda that's thrown about them and the lack of opportunities, and that the only way they can get a good degree in something like engineering, for example, is to join the military. And then you've got the labor aristocracy, because they're big tutors and supporters of the military, and any family in the labor aristocracy who has a history of their family being in the military will join the military. So they've got the aristocrats will be fat, proletariat will end up being fit, and the lumpen proletariat will typically be in a malnourished state.
I just don't think there's enough, Stone. I mean,
there's more than enough.
You're overestimating.
No, you're overestimating how fat the country is. Okay.
Americans are not physically or mentally healthy.
How much of the population makes up the military? How much the percent of a population ever makes up a military?
Probably about 5%, 10.
And how much of the population is obese?
In America, about a quarter, possibly more.
So that means that there is enough of a population to formalize a military. Like you genuinely, you don't need that much. It's all there. It's just about mobilization. And trust me, when things start to melt down, the labor aristocracy will be the ones cracking the whip. They'll be the ones because that's normally where people will side. They'll try and push to labor aristocracy. I mean, those people don't want to join a fight a war. Well, those guys control the cultural hegemonic institutions of power. They're the ones telling everyone to fight wars. The people who brought up Syria during the 2016 election first wasn't the bourgeoisie. It wasn't the political candidates. It was petty bourgeois media sources that were bringing it up. These people want war, and if they can't get enough people from the lower class to fight their wars, they'll fight them themselves. They will join the army. Yeah, the military does have a habit of duping the lumpen proletariat. It's not so much about them duping us. They haven't duped us. The people who are duped are the people believing the propaganda, which is the proletariat and the lumpen, the labor aristocracy. They dupe us in the sense that they get us to do their work for them, but
I just looked it up, Stone. Almost half the population in America is obese. That's a lot.
but still, there's still not enough to quell the military from functioning. But with the lumpen proletariat, it's not so much about being duped; it's so much about being put in a position where it's like, well, I've got to make this choice that I don't really care about. Like most lumpen people that go in there, they're in there because they're homeless, not in there because they actually care about the military. Because duping would be to fool.
Well, okay. The thing is, how would you expect an American to fight in this day and age? Because I don't think Americans are mentally prepared.
How do you expect
for a
anyone
war.
to fight? No one's mentally ready for a war.
No one is, but I don't think.
I'm saying principally humans, people. We're never mentally ready to go for a war. Like wars happen, and when a war happens, propaganda mobilizes people. This is an individualistic style perspective. It's looking at things in too much of a small. We're gonna look at class interests, and class interests will overpower personal interests. Individualism is a scam. I mean, the labor aristocracy preach individualism until crisis occurs, and then they're all about forming into these blocks. Um, it, you know, and Americans, they've been ready for war all the time. They keep fucking calling for it every fucking moment of the chance they get. They're all for the Iraq war and the Afghanistan war, all for the Syria war. Um, it would be easier to get these people in a war against Russia and China than it would be not to. And a lot of Americans would be like, finally, they're actually fighting them, not saying they're the enemy all the time.
Well, I'm saying, would Americans truly be, as a whole, how prepared are they mentally for a war? Because I don't think Americans understand, in general, just how devastating a war is. Because unlike people in Western Eastern Europe, America hasn't had their country destroyed left and right by wars for hundreds of years. Like in Europe, you couldn't even go like a century without a war, starting before prior to World War One.
Actually, it was more like we couldn't go 20 years. Not even shorter than that. We couldn't go 10 years without a war. But then again, America was the same around that time. The war with the Indians, the war with the Spanish, they were like 20, 30 years apart from each other. It's a European thing. We like war. I will say with the Americans, they don't know, and you're absolutely correct. I would not qualm you on that, but they think they do because they do see that their country has been affected by America's warring policy, but they don't understand how.
Well, okay, here's the thing. I'm not doing this to praise Russia or anything, but I actually think Russians are far more physically and mentally, fit than your average American. And I
mean, kind of.
I actually think they're far tougher than Americans are.
So the average calorie intake is about the same for America and Russia. But Russia has more rampant drug addiction problems.
Americans like okay. Here's the thing. The thing about Americans, they like to talk a lot of shit, and you know, thinking that okay, they're going to go in this country, steamroll everyone, and they're going to win, in a matter of hours. That typical shit. That
I mean,
you know,
where's my mate Jack where I need him? Because he could go on for like ages telling you about how like tech for tech, like the US
like
just hasn't got it against the Russians. Like the Russians are using tanks that, whilst they're very uncomfortable, they got no chance of penning through. And they have the tanks in numbers. They got the numbers to support it. The only thing America really has against Russia is America has the socioeconomics to support this war. Russia, not so much. But Russia has China. If China backs Russia, then America's got no chance because the only downfall Russia has is it can't finance war as good as America can because the Russian economy is kind of shit. Let's be real.
I don't know much about the Russian economy.
They're like a similar level to Britain, but their country and population is massively larger.
Now, I'm not saying that Americans aren't capable of fighting in a war, or Americans, aren't, wouldn't want to fight in a war. But I haven't seen one country that's as bloodthirsty as America.
I will say what you're on about with America, we've already seen. Like, so a lot of people who go into war with America are like not fit either mentally or physically for the war. And we've seen that actually cause a lot of downfalls. So I'll tell you like a quick story. So there's this convoy of Bradleys, and I think there might be a couple of tanks with them. I don't know, but there's a convoy of Bradleys moving, and they um it could turn into a Iraq versus Kuwait as well. That's interesting. But so there's this convoy of Bradleys moving, and one of them hit. So they keep hitting mines, and they're fine at first, and then the one Bradley it hits a mine, and the driver gets knocked out. So the crew has a set of options to do. What do you think the American crew does? A, check if the driver's all right, figures out he's passed out, switches the driver out for the assistant driver, and continues moving with the convoy. Or B, gets out of the vehicle in a panic, leaves the driver there even though he is alive, and then the driver gets stuck in a panic and only gets discovered by the American Armed Forces because he drives around in zigzags like crazy in a panic, losing his head because I don't know if you know this about tank drivers, they can't see very much without a commander, and he's got no communications because it was knocked out by the mine, and he's running around. They literally abandoned him. They didn't even check if he was dead to take him out the vehicle, just in case the vehicle is paralyzed, which the vehicle wasn't. They scrambled out of the vehicle and they left this guy for dead in Afghanistan. That's American camaraderie at its best. There is a lot of things that show problems with this, and I know that America, I reckon it would be able to mobilize the force. Would that force be an effective one? Not really. Not really. I wouldn't think they'd be very effective at all.
Americans are cowards, just like Israelis.
It's oh, go on. Sorry.
Say what you will, but the Russians and they don't fuck around. They're not chicken shits like a lot of Americans tend to be. So that's why I'm saying I just don't think America, knows what government knows, but the people who support these wars know what the fuck they're up against. They haven't learned. Like Vietnam, they lost that war. They lost the war in Afghanistan. I mean, I know these wars are not meant to be won because that's not the point. If they could win these wars quickly if they wanted to, but if they did that, they wouldn't be able to sell, war. They wouldn't be able to sell a bunch of weapons. So it's in the military-industrial complex best interest to keep these wars going, even though it's irrational.
And it would be in better interest to imperialism to actually just do what you said. Like your own gold here. Fucking hell.
It's like just win and lead. Just win and do what you set out to do. But no. But then
I
again,
mean, even
that's
not just to leave. So, I mean, they want to keep it in perpetual war so they can keep constant support at home because they're trying to avoid doing what was an easier option, which is invade, win, and control the society. I mean, because the Boer War, I'll use that as an example again, because we had the same problems America had with the Afghan War and the Iraq War, where our troops were not healthy enough for the war and we were struggling with getting healthy troops. So we were having to conscript unhealthy people into the army. America didn't have to go that far, but it was basically like that. I mean, I've seen pictures of Americans in Afghanistan and Iraq. There were people with fucking beer belly guts on them and stuff. Like, not everyone was big, fit, honcho fucking Marine guy. And these boys might have been officers or not, but I'm of the position that an officer, a field officer, we're on about here, should be as fit as his men. Uh, as fit as their men. I should use um, neutral terminology because the capitalist military has finally caught up with the socialist militaries. 70 years later, they now have women in the military, but and not even completely.
Let's have a diverse, like let's have a diverse, like murderers.
Well, I mean, it's like when Trump legalized trans people going into the military, or, like you had all these like labor aristocrats going mental about, it, and I'm like, thank fuck that my trans comrades can't be forced into a war right now. Then, like, that's great. Like they get to stay. They have, if they were to put a conscription in, then people are safe right now. Great stuff. Although, given that they are at the butt end of eugenics all the time, America would find a way to blame the war on them if they weren't fucking involved in it anyway. They always find a way to pick a minority and blame them. It's normally the Jews or the Muslims or the fucking the Africans or the natives of America and Britain and people like that. Like we've got this big stick up our ass when it comes to these things. But with the Boer War, we didn't war for ages. The whole war process was to win the war and take over the land. And I do believe in the second Boer War by the skin of our teeth. We did win that one. And what ended up happening was that apartheid ended up being formed 40, 50 years later. I think it's 40 years later. When those same people we were warring against managed to then build up another struggle against us and take over the region. So Britain was in a different sort of situation when its imperial bloc was diminishing, but it had similar relations. It's hard to compare on that principle because of neo-colonialism wasn't really a collapsing element for the British Empire. If anything, if it adopted neo-colonialism earlier, it would have got another 20 years in its step. I mean, it lasted as the British Commonwealth was, as a measure, was that embracement. The reason why the British Empire still exists today was because, just like the French did as well, at the end of World War II, they did then go against Churchill's idiotic ideas and embrace the idea of neo-colonializing the empire so they don't have to lose it to America. Because fascinating fact for all those people that want to support people like Russia or China in this thing because they're against America, works better for China, but this goes for Russia too. The US was doing the same thing to the UK that China does to the US today. Actually, they were doing it more than China does to the US today. Because the US used to go rampant. Like the president of America used to do these massive speeches about how Britain needs to let go of India and free the Indian people and free this and free that. I'm surprised Caleb doesn't go on about those elements of Roosevelt. I thought they would be to Caleb's liking.
I don't
Maybe
think
he doesn't
Caleb,
know.
to Caleb Maupin, if you're not white, you're not human.
I wonder whether he's going by the old Anglo-Saxon designation of white, where it only meant Anglo-Saxon, because he seems to have no care in the world for the Irish struggle. Like, that was the thing that pissed me off the most with that video. Like, he diminishes it to a religious spat. Like, they were being killed for being Catholic. Caleb, there were people who were English and Catholic who were not being killed at the time. I don't think it was because they were Catholic. Try again. Maybe it's because they're Irish. And
Aren't the
also
Irish treated
Oh,
as
sorry,
second
go on.
class citizen in Britain, or even Ireland, their own country.
They were for a very long time. I mean, Ireland was, everyone goes on about like all of these Americans. The Irish weren't slaves at any point in time. Okay, so a country takes over your land through brutal war. It kills your aristocracy and plants English aristocrats over control of your land. Forces you to work on farms. You can't leave or you are killed. You're not paid. You're not supplied for. You just get the leftovers of what's left, what we don't want to feed us. How is that not slavery? Does that not sound like the type of slavery we saw in South Africa? Like, it might not sound like the same as the chattel slavery that we saw moving around the world, where people were being fluxed and sold, but it does sound a lot like some of the chattel. Some of the I can't remember what you call it. Fucking, it's like a word for a plantation style shit that you could see in South Africa, which probably still was under the definition of chattel slavery, but I don't know. I'm not a literacy guy. The In Ireland, they still had slavery. It was just not done in the same sense. It wasn't a slave master to slave relationship. It was feudal lords encompassing the land in a way in which these people just couldn't leave. They weren't getting given protections. It wasn't this, because in feudalism, the whole class relationship is supposed to be that you're oppressed by the feudal lord, but you at least got some benefits of protection, of accessibility to your own land to utilize it to sustain yourself, um, etc. The In the Irish relationship, there is no benefit. Tell me the benefit that comes from people starving in the millions, famines every fucking year. Like, people can go on about how the Russian Empire had a famine every 5 year. It was non-stop famines when we were oppressing the Irish because, if we had a problem with food, we'd take more from the Irish than we already would, and then we get used to taking more anyway. And as capitalism developed, well, fuck me, we've got an easy fucking place to manipulate and colonize and oppress the fuck out of. The British Empire started in Ireland, and the British mentality and organizing slavery and our concept and how we adopted the Spanish concept of blackness also came from our Irish struggle. I mean, when the Spanish come up with the idea of blackness, which was used by the Spanish specifically for slavery, we took that instantly, and one of the first people we akined to blackness was the fucking Irish. I cannot stand Irish racism, and what Caleb did in that video was Irish racism. He said that the Irish movement was not being led by communists and socialists. The Fenians, fucking, people leading the Irish struggle at the time. Majority of their leadership was in the First International. Majority of their leadership were communists, and fucking majority of the Fenians themselves were socialists. Don't fucking talk about Irish history if you don't know fucking shit about it. And he goes on about, oh, I'm not Ukrainian, I'm not Belarus, I can't tell you something. Where was his, I'm not Irish, or I don't know Irish history, I can't tell you this? No, he acts like he knows it. He says that Marx only noticed the Irish towards the end of his life. I'm sorry, Native Americans and Syrians were the only two people who helped the Irish with monetary help during their struggle when they were going through their famine. Other than other Celtic people, of course, but I'm on about people, around the world
Wasn't one
that
of
aren't
Frederick
Celtic.
Beagle's wasn't one of his lovers Irish?
Yes,
It's like, what the fuck? This is base. It's like Caleb Maupin knows exactly what he's doing. It's distortion. It's basically taking all of the things that Nazis, what they think of the concept of nations, of the struggles of people they see as inferiors, and just basically brush it under the rug. It's like,
but I mean,
this has been going on. This has been going on for over 3 hours, and it's kind of derailed for a
but the
little
thing
bit.
that I'm getting at is that with this issue is that Syrians and natives, two heavily oppressed groups by the Ottomans and the Americans, and the British, with the natives in Canada, were being and the natives in the islands of the Caribbean, that were being heavily oppressed at the time could know it. These people with, you know, big degrees, fucking petty bourgeois, they obviously know it. But apparently they just discovered at the end of his life. That's what I was getting at. It's just complete obfuscation of history. Fucking ginger bastard.
I'm sorry about that, but I haven't found an appropriate way to discuss what went on with the eShop of Nintendo, because this issue takes far more prevalence over what's going on with, with a company, like Nintendo. I mean, it's first world like stuff, and I don't feel like it's relevant to this particular stream, because it would be disingenuous of me to talk about that sort of thing while there's a potential world war, rising. I mean, one thing I'm still baffled though to this day is one of the best streams I've ever done. Be Liberal deleted it. It was the one when we said no war to Iran.
Why would you delete that? That's a good topic.
Because V Level's a fucking cunt, and
I mean,
and every time he has a falling out with people, he wants to basically erase everything that they were a part of, even if their videos were popular with the audience.
do you know what it is? It's them feeling it's them feeling like they're poisoned if they keep it there. Like I remember having this discussion with it's not just a few members in MRM when Conor Gillis went away. I was like, if they've said something good, who cares? Just leave it there. I don't give a shit. Like, let them fucking stew in the fact that their better ideas sit on our channel while they stew in shitter grounds.
I still have Conor Gillis's collaboration with two of them actually with me on my channel. I'm not going to delete especially the streams I did showing solidarity to the Palestinians of Palestine. I mean, fuck that. Or when me and Conor Gillis talked about various different topics. Yeah, Conor Gillis, we may have had a falling out, but that doesn't mean I'm going to get rid of the material. I mean, her best ideas are always going to be out there, and well, tough shit. I'll use it against her. That's how I view it. But be liberal can't weaponize my own words against me, because yes, I may have changed my positions from because obviously I've learned a lot in the past few years. But I've been consistently anti-war, and I've been consistently anti-American. Those positions haven't changed. And Be Liberal knows this. He can't keep that content knowing that my positions are been consistent. Because Liberal is pushing a certain kind of audience that he wants. He wants the Nazguls, because the Nazguls give him more views. At least he thinks it will. And he's looking to have Caleb help publish one of his books. He told me this, by the way.
Oh no! The guy's gonna write a book. I'm gonna have to read that. That's gonna be funny.
Be Liberal writes a book, but I doubt that's gonna happen, because Be Liberal would have to reveal who his true name is.
Oh no, you can write under a ghost name still.
Yeah, but what is he gonna call himself? Be Liberal. This book by Be Liberal, the
titty liberal,
or the host of Ewoks Unhinged. It's like when people like if he tries to even use the word Ewoks, Disney will fucking sue his ass.
I mean, he'd probably just go for some like bod basic white guy name, because it's what white authors always do.
I'm sorry, I can't resist because I don't fucking apologize for fucking taking another jab at Be Liberal. I mean, the fucking guy's a fucking quack. I mean, he did a fucking hilariously stupid fucking thing on his community post about USSR 2.
Yeah, because a fascist country fighting a fascist country makes a socialist country. I mean, that is literally the only way that I can draw this out is he's doing the maths of two negatives make a positive. Except you're adding the two negatives together, so that would actually make a bigger negative. But shh, don't tell him that. Because if you add two negatives together, you just add two positives together and then add the negative sign back in. Welcome to the weird world of algebra.
By the way, I got a secret to tell people regarding Be Liberal. Be Liberal was anti-Stalin and Mao until I told him to knock that shit off. That you need to read more Lenin and Mao and before you argue with anti-communists. And he changed his position almost immediately. So Be Liberal, his positions are, he'll change his position when it's convenient. If Caleb Maupin, the thing with him, if that didn't work out, guess what? He would probably go for another grift because Be Liberal from the very start has been a grifter. I mean, anybody like who wants to know, Be Liberal, he started off bitching about Dave Filoni fucking with Star Wars. I mean, that's how Be Liberal started off with his grift. He grifted in the Star Wars fandom. That when that blew in his face, he freaking abandoned everything that Ewoks Unhinged was popular for. Like, people went there because of Star Wars mostly, not because of fucking politics.
I mean, and you can vouch for this as well because Darks, you have to put up with the agony of dealing with this. I am the opposite. I will argue my argument even if it's not the strongest of arguments, and I'm in a position like you got to properly put me in a position where it's like, okay, this is how it is, and it's absolutely correct and prove because I will always look for every contradiction in an argument. Because you've got to know that you're right, and then you've got to have that attainment to it. Because especially like let's say you're someone who struggles with engaging with the literature and all that, you've got to ask more questions. Like I'm not trying to put anyone through like the runs and rhythms because I'm someone who struggles with this. I'm speaking from experience. You got to ask more questions. You've got to entail more because if you're limited in your capacity to engage, you've got to try and find the other ways you can engage. Listening and speaking and transponding is sort of the way to deal with it. There's a video because I'm not going to go into it here because I'll end up keeping you for like hours. But there's a video I'm going to do at some point where it's going to be talking about tactics and mannerisms of getting material to people devoid of the use of just relying on the internet to get materials to people, because we've got to understand that not only in the third world, but in the first world, there are plenty of people that don't have access to the internet.
Well, I just find it really ridiculous how someone could like make a joke about USSR too, as thousands of people are dying and millions more are being displaced, and
Maybe. Well, that's what the Americans think the Soviet Union did.
and millions more, are probably going to like have their lives ruined. Who don't, I'm referring to those in Germany because their bill will suddenly increase. It's like I just find this sociopathic and disgusting. I know I've tackled this again multiple times, but I feel like it needs to be said that war is a bad thing, and I think we need to normalize this on the left. Fuck left. Let's not. It's lost its meaning. Communist. That being anti-war is the most important position to have. Because if you're not anti-war, then why are you a communist? Because war destroys the lives of the proletariat. Nobody except the capitalists benefit from imperialism. Nobody benefits. Like there are no good guys in Ukraine and Russia. It's fascists versus an even worse fascist. Like if Putin was serious about denazifying Ukraine, he should start with Russia. but he won't do that.
I mean, so there's one thing I will mention just towards the end of this that calms it down is that so Caleb, um, his position is quite similar to what a lot of Nazi positions are, even my Nazi positions. So it's this other sidism. My nation would do better if it was on the other side. It wouldn't be collapsing the way it was. So I did this with Britain in World War II. When I was a Nazi, I used to be like, if Britain was on the side of the Nazis, it wouldn't have lost its empire. That was a mentality I had from about the age of 6 or 7. I was into history a lot when I was a kid. And when you're an abused and traumatized kid, edgy Hitler ends up becoming a bit of an influencer. You know how the rhythm goes. No river to be cried for me. I was a fucking horrible person and I got no fucking sympathy for how I was. I see it as a distinct part of my life that I really fucking have no respect for. But so, you do this like otherism. The grass is greener on the other side, and it's typically done to push this idea of a could be a promised land idea. This mentality of if we organized en masse with our power and conglomerated it with their power, we could bring ourselves back forward. It's very much an imperialist mentality. It's looking at how imperialism could be in a better position, what it could do to better win its needs, and obviously with in the context of someone being British and growing up, you would see that the American Empire controls the British Empire. So you would have this mentality of, oh, if we'd just done it this way, we wouldn't be under control. It's a little different with the American Empire because there's not this seen controller, although according to Caleb, it's Israel, and he makes very anti-Semitic remarks to say that Israel is the controller of America. America controls Israel. It is not Israel that controls America. America is the imperialist hegemon, not Israel. And he talks about Jewish bankers and other people like that in a very weary anti-Semitic way. So whilst it's not like Britain where I can instantly destroy distinction to America, and I tell you now, that didn't stop me from having anti-Semitic beliefs as a Nazi. But Caleb doesn't identify openly, as a Nazi like I did back when I was a fucking. I stopped, I think, when I was like 16. I think that was when I took acid and fucking my head got smacked around my head like a brick, or with a brick, not literally, but trust me, I ended up having to like rebuild my entire viewpoint of everything. I was going into places I'd been a million times, and it's like I'd never been there before, which felt scary as all living hell. And I ended up a Corbyn supporter for like a few months. It was weird. And I like Trotsky for like I think it was 2 weeks, and I joined a communist party, and they laughed at me when I said I like Trotsky. But
what's funny?
Caleb's anti-Semitism is his source for his victim complex. But sorry, go on.
He brought up Lenin having Jewish ancestry in that segment. It's like, wait, what relevance does this have?
Okay, he also said that Lenin's just Russian. Lenin's part Mongolian. I'm sure you're aware of this. Lenin was not just Russian. He was.
Well, no, he said he brought up Lenin having Jewish ancestry.
Yeah, okay. I know he had Jewish ancestry, but he ignored Lenin's Mongolian ancestry.
I know. It's like, what the fuck does him having Jewish ancestry? How is that relevant? How is that relevant to? I just feel like Caleb. It's like this is the common trope I've heard from Nazis. Basically, when they say like, "Oh, the Bolshevism is a Jewish conspiracy." It's like I've heard people say that Stalin was a Jew or Lenin was a Jew.
Stalin come from an Orthodox family.
I know, but this plays into Nazi stereotypes, and it's like it's almost as if Caleb Maupin is just dog whistling when every time he brings up someone being. It's like, why does it matter if Lenin's background was Jewish? Who gives a shit?
I mean, Lenin didn't. Lenin was very disrespectful to his Jewish heritage.
Well, I'm just saying, who gives a shit if he was? I'm just being real. Why is
I
that
mean,
relevant?
and as Nets pointed out, I mean, you would say that 'cause if I remember rightly, Ashkenazi means the Jewish people of Russia, because there isn't really a Jewish ethnicity; it's a religion, so it would be of Ashkenazi descent. And Lenin was non-religious, so it's actually really not. You know, if he was going to mention it, the only importance would be he's part Ashkenazi, he's part Mongolian, and he's part Russian. But if he's not even identifying with his Jewish culture or heritage. He's more integrated with his Russian and his Mongolian culture at that point, then,
What I'm
isn't he?
basically saying is, I think Caleb brought that up because he's basically saying that the national question is a Jewish conspiracy.
Well, I mean, he's saying that the
Because
Lenin.
why would you bring up his Jewish heritage while you're talking about the national question?
Well, he was trying to make this envisage that Lenin comes from a well-off background and was part of the establishment sort of type. So he didn't want to write. Well, not part of the establishment, sorry, but part of the he's part of the upper class and he's part of like fucking society of Russia where he's a benefactor of the oppression of the other people. So he didn't want to write, the thesis on it. So he got Stalin. He just grabbed Stalin to write it because Stalin's a Georgian. Like it's like if anything, what he's implying is that like Lenin was doing oppression Olympics and was like, no,
I just
does he
find
not
this shit.
understand why Lenin and Stalin was close? Like so Lenin and Stalin got along close quite well, and actually there was some squabbles because Lenin didn't like the fact that he was a jokester. Like Stalin liked to take the piss, which yeah, all respect to him. I love to take the piss in points of serious motion. It helps me tolerate the situations. Um, but they got on really well because so Lenin went and met Stalin personally because he'd heard about the exploits of Stalin in Georgia and wanted to meet the man for himself. That's how they got it off. That's how they started getting on with each other. He'd heard about this fucking this Stalin geezer, this Chukasvili, and these he gets to meet fucking he goes out of his way to meet Comrade Chukasvili and they have it off. Next thing you know, Stalin's appearing all over places with them. They're getting on tight. He just doesn't like the fact that Stalin's a prankster.
I don't know. I was really confused when he brought up his Jewish background. Like every time someone has anything Jewish, he always has to bring that up.
I mean,
Okay,
he even had to like dead name fucking Ayn Rand. Like, I don't like Ayn Rand and all this stuff like that. But when you're going out of your way to make sure that their name is exclaimed in the most Jewish form it can be, it seems you are a bit eccentric and may need to calm down.
I think Caleb Maupin, it's the evidence of him being an anti-Semite is strong because every time someone, regardless if they're evil or not, when you put a special emphasis on their Jewish background, I find that suspicious within itself. Anybody should, because that's just always emphasize, a someone who's Jewish. They make it. They have to make it. They slap it in your face that they're Jews.
Yep, Logan, you are absolutely correct. Ayn Rand is trash, just like her books. But if she's gonna call herself Ayn Rand, I'm gonna call her Ayn Rand. That's the name she legally uses. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna go out of my way to be like, Elizabeth Rosenbaum. I think that was her original name. I'm not gonna go about like that. That's just why. Like that, and so the thing is this now it wouldn't seem so bad if he hadn't had all the other bits. If there wasn't all the bits of history of him being anti-Semitic, this wouldn't seem so bad. It just seemed like he's mentioning some. But the fact that Something that he would go to mention his Jewish heritage before he even mentions the fact that he's Mongolian. He's fucking Lenin's part Mongolian. Like, how do you know he's part Jewish and not know he's part Mongolian? Who have you been reading to find out Lenin's history? Caleb, and
it's like I am convinced that Caleb hates Lenin and hates Stalin because the way he talks about Lenin and Stalin, it just sounds like he fundamentally disagrees with everything that they believe in. It's like, what the fuck does he actually
he likes them in the same way that Xi Jinping likes them. He likes them as symbols for what he wants to push and nothing more.
It's just like, I think the beginning, near the beginning of the stream, when I react the first section of this of the stream that I watched, or whatever you want to call it, when there was an intro of him having actual fucking people that died to fucking further people,
and then just Caleb Maupin.
And Caleb Maupin comparing himself to them, and it's disgusting. It's like, what kind of narcissistic sociopath does that?
I mean, yeah, if I was going to do something like that, I would only ever have the voices. I would not put myself to their level. I would then, if I was going to do any introduction after that, if I even wanted to say something proper after that, I'd wait till that introduction's ended and my face is on the screen, so I'm not sticking myself in the same context.
It's like,
because if I stick myself in the same context, I feel like I'm trying to sap from their fucking bullshit.
It's like 100 years from now, no one will know who Caleb Maupin is.
Yeah, Bioshock does make fun of Ayn Rand and her ideology, and it does so in a very funky way. It's actually why I don't mind Bioshock Infinite all too much, because it may have its problems, but it does a good job of taking the piss out of Ayn Rand, let's be real.
Well, that's a topic for another time, but yeah. It's like what we were saying. What was I saying? Yeah, Caleb. Yeah. It's just...
Logan, you distracted me.
Sorry, it's just Caleb Maupin. It's just sickening how he actually compares himself, because 100 years from now, no one's gonna know who Caleb is. Nobody. To be generous, there might be a footnote with the CPI.
You may have a Wikipedia page.
To be a footnote, but Caleb Maupin's no fucking... To compare himself to Martin Luther King. Now, there's a lot we can criticize Martin Luther King for, but towards the end of his life, Martin Luther King was starting to sound more like Malcolm X.
Yeah. It's interesting that when people start to sound like Malcolm X, they end up hitting dust and hay. They don't just get in prison, they get shot. And then the FBI goes and pulls the plug on him. The FBI killed Martin Luther King. He could have survived that fucking assassination attempt,
It's like, and Huey, well, not Huey, I mean, Fred Hampton. He died before he had a chance to actually really do anything.
And his fucking son has stabbed him in the back, fucking profiting off him and turning him into just about black rights and taking away the revolutionary from Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton was all about revolution and all about black people having their right through black nationalism, but he was all about revolution in that process. Yeah, I mean, Fred Hampton always sounded so much like fucking Kwame Ture, like a Stokely Carmichael at the time.
It does make sense why Caleb Maupin supports the Nation of Islam, an anti-Semitic, organization that does nothing for the black community. That I mean, if it really did,
you know what's worse? Well, so they do stuff for the black community. I will say that they do things for the black community, but they are anti-Semitic. They are a very big problematic organization. But the problem is that Louis Farrakhan. So what Caleb is doing is he's supporting a guy who was involved with the fucking CIA.
Not to mention,
the CIA worked. The CIA worked with members of the Nation of Islam to assassinate Martin Luther King. Sorry, not Martin Luther King. Sorry, to assassinate Malcolm X, to prevent Malcolm X from ruling the organization and straighten it out.
Malcolm X you know what? Yeah, Louis Farrakhan had a hand in his murder.
Yes.
He did. Like, we don't know how much, he had a hand in there in his murder, but you're willing to support the guy who basically assisted with the assassination of Malcolm X, which leads me, which is suspect to me. Not to mention, Malcolm X helped fund. If it weren't for Malcolm X, the Nation of Islam wouldn't be where it is today. Like, supporting the Nation of Islam is basically spitting on Malcolm X's legacy. It really is.
I mean, there's a reason why people like Malcolm Shabazz X, Martin Luther King, Kwame Ture, Fred Hampton, Huey P. Newton, fucking Eldridge Cleaver, Amata Shakur, fucking, well, to be fair, the many Shakurs of the movement, not just the Maya, but she was a fucking absolute legendary comrade. These comrades are absolute pinnacles for revolutionary struggle, and when I hear off of the types of quote unquote Marxist Leninists, I mean, I know one from the CPGBML that's very much like this. They disregard them because they're like, oh, they weren't successful. They weren't like the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union succeeded. Okay, did it? Because it did. It succeeded at things, but in the end, it still failed. So we've got to learn from that. In the same way, we've got to learn from everything. Every struggle is still successful in certain realms where it's also not. And you've got to look for the successes and look for the failures. And to ignore the struggles of those people, and all of those people are core to what made the Black Panthers. The people who formed the Black Panthers come from tutorage of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and the American Indian movement, because most of the people who started the fucking Black Panther Party were members of the American Indian movement. Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael at the time, was a core member of the American Indian movement. And what's it? Which is actually the AIM still exists today, if I remember rightly. I don't know how good they are today. I do believe they still do programs for people, but I've not looked into it enough, so I couldn't comment. But the Black Panthers are key and important for First World struggle, because it doesn't matter how successful the Soviet Union is. Lenin even said it himself. It's not the same material conditions. How can we turn around and go to the Soviet Union and say, and this is what we're going to do here? We've got the same material conditions. We didn't have the same material conditions 100 years ago, and we don't have the same material conditions, certainly so now. But we do have very similar material conditions to Cold War America. They're not very far away from that. So we should very much learn from that. But these people don't want to do that. All Caleb wants to do, all he took from that, was disarm black people. Because that's what he agrees with the Black Panthers on. He agrees with Huey P. Newton's revisionism at the end of his reign, because he got stiff in the head, as Cleaver would put it.
Yeah, but who would have thought a year ago that I'd be heavily against Caleb Maupin? I never thought I would be. But
Because you like truth. That's the thing.
The times have changed. I never wanted to at least originally, to basically denounce Caleb Maupin, but it's liberalism if I don't say anything against Caleb Maupin. It was inevitable I was going to do one, because Stone, for those of you who have seen his videos, he's done a good amount of videos on Caleb Maupin. I don't intend to do this as a regular thing, but I feel like with the Ukraine situation, it was relevant to do that clip for Caleb Maupin, because for those of you who stuck this long, I needed, you guys to see and feel the outrage I felt watching it, because I cannot believe that there are people who are still fucking claiming that this guy is a communist. It's a fucking insult. It's an insult to every communist that has fought and died to liberate their people, to compare him to the likes of this fascist aristocrat who has never experienced poverty, never experienced living in a war zone, having bombs dropped. A fascist has the nerve to talk down to people that have family members that have fucking suffer severe PTSD. Regardless how you feel about the likes of Little Oi, she doesn't deserve to be fucking harassed by his fucking cult. Or Hakeem,
Absolutely.
who actually who narrowly avoided death. Who, God knows how many occasions he narrowly avoided death. We don't even know what he's going through. None of us can imagine what he's going through. How dare anyone call themselves a freaking communist and fucking support Caleb Maupin talking down to victims of fucking imperialism. It's disgusting. It's like, this is fucking the kind of chauvinism that fucking Lenin and Mao would be fucking sickened by.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And no, not taking a side is not taking a side against the imperialists. You know what side? The side I'm on the proletariat, because the proletariat are the ones that will suffer the brunt of the aggression in Russia. Whether it's the Russian proletariat or the Ukrainian proletariat, these fucking Nazis that people want to hype up, most of them are not going to stay in the country. A lot of them are going to fucking flee the country and go to America or go to Europe. That's where they're going to go. They're not going to suffer the brunt of these attacks. It's going to be everyone else.
And so an interesting insight as well is that, so when I joined MRN, Caleb had actually gotten the org, like a lot of people have been gotten with, focused on BreadTube, and that was the first thing that I had turned around and said, nada, that ain't happening, not doing this, no more BreadTube. And this is when I managed to pointate the position that Caleb is the problem. Look at what is happening. Look at what he's preaching. Everyone is like, it's been going over everyone's head while everyone has been focusing on Vosh this, Destiny that, fucking, Xander Hall this, Thought Soap that, because we better not say slime, because the slime, it's anti-revolutionary. The workers are sick of slime. My best Caleb impression. But the what's it? That was defracturing people away from the real issues, and it ends up taking up time from just talking about Arizona, talking about the third world, getting shit like that out and about.
It's like, how many times can you address that Bosch is a fucking pedophile fascist? It's like, you can't make it. It's like, Bosch is not a threat. Yes, he's a Nazi. Yeah, he talks with Nazis. Yeah, he dog whistles to Nazis. And yeah, his audience is bigger than Caleb Maupin. But Vosh isn't. In 5 years from now, nobody's gonna know who Vosh is.
I mean, isn't he already liable to be fucking arrested for being a fucking dirty pedo?
Probably. Xander Pig is fucking. I mean, no, he's a fucking. None of these people are fucking relevant. Caleb Maupin actually, he has far bigger connections than Vosh could dream of. He has connections all over the world. He actually is intelligent. He knows what he's doing. And he's distorting, Marxism to the point where it's becoming difficult for those who aren't versed in politics to see who are the fascists and who are the communists. And people just don't see the difference. And when we're at a point where communism and fascism are equated as the same thing, That is something we should all be concerned with.
It should give you the spooks. I mean, seriously, this is a problem that we ended up seeing in Nazi Germany when the Nazis came to power. And this isn't because people are stupid. I mean, a lot of the people, I mean, you know, a lot of people in the lower class may end up being convinced and tricked, but labor aristocrats, do you think these people with all this fucking intellectual support, like, do people really think these people are just unaware? Because it's a tendency I see from a lot of Marxists. See, a lot of Marxists seem to think that a lot of people who have bad positions are like just unaware, and it's like that. So no, ignorance exists in a lot of people, and that is a problem. But an aristocrat, how the fuck are they? How the fuck is it because they're just unaware? They have all the accessibility in the world to understand. They're one of the most privileged classes in the world, if not, the only thing more privileged than them is a capitalist. And you could argue that a labor aristocrat lives a more lively life because they're not just some drifting monogamous monstrosity that goes around spending all their money on fucking oppressing the world and genociding millions. But the socioeconomically they're like third or second, in the class beneficiary of privilege. They're doing pretty fucking well for themselves. These people, when they become politically active, it is in the same way that a proletarian becomes politically active. They have developed a sense of class consciousness. They are not in the proletariat. Their class consciousness is therefore differently.
You
So
should
these
be.
people will converge around fascists. So you should always be terrified of a class-conscious labor aristocrat for what they might do, because the only good labor aristocrat is a class traitor.
Yeah,
Class
and I
traitor.
know I've been speaking about Caleb for almost 4 fucking hours. Jesus Christ. But I feel like I have to, you know, I may do this again depending on what happens, but we
Well, I'll
can't
probably end up having to talk about something regarding Caleb soon anyway, so you can always come on.
we can't just sit back and allow an anti-war protest to eventually, be slandered. Caleb is gonna. He's gonna probably. I've heard he's already doing that, but if he does, I I can't sit by and allow someone to do that, because what makes Caleb Maupin different from the neocons in America slandering anti-war protesters? What's the difference between Caleb Maupin and Ben Shapiro? What's the difference? Ben Shapiro's fucking thought people who didn't support the war in Iraq should have been arrested.
They're both like sleazy sort of guys, that, like really scrawny geezers that promote toxic masculinity. It's kind of hilarious. Like it's always funny when you hear them doing it. It's like, why are you promoting this idiotic idea that kind of diminishes both of you two? You're not really aiding yourself by promoting something that's kind of against your own interests. And bit of a weird move for someone who's supposed to be like, yeah, I'm all for the trans and I'm not sexist, but Caleb promotes toxic masculinity. I hope he's aware that toxic masculinity, just like toxic femininity, which can also exist within society if people are unaware. I mean, the promotion of over sexualized images and ridiculous body typing that's pervade onto them is a good example of that. These things are cancerous things to promote in society and very much inflict trans people heavily.
Yeah, I can't. I think I've said everything I needed to say about this topic, because we'll have to wait to see how the situation of Ukraine unfolds and Caleb Maupin.
I've got 4 good words to end it on.
What?
Um, war. War never changes.
I'll end it on a more serious note. No war with Ukraine. Down with fascism.
I